Welcome, weary traveller. You have wandered far through the rushing currents of your waking day, carrying the weight of 1,000 fleeting thoughts, 100 urgent demands. But here, in this quiet sanctuary of shadows and time, there is nothing left to carry. Lay down your burdens at the threshold, breathe in the cool, still air of an autumn night, long forgotten by the modern world. Exhale the tension tightly woven into your shoulders. You are entirely safe here. The restless noise of the future cannot follow you into the past. Tonight we drift backward, leaving behind the harsh glare of screens and the relentless ticking of clocks. We are drifting on a gentle tide, carrying us toward the misty, lantern-lit streets of the ancient capital of Japan, Nishijin in Kyoto, in the year 1720. Close your eyes and allow the darkness behind your eyelids to soften into the velvety hues of deep indigo and soft gold. The world is asleep, but history is breathing, waiting just for you. Listen closely beyond the silence of your room. Can you hear the soft, rhythmic rustle? It is the heartbeat of a sleeping city, the sigh of wooden beams settling into the earth, the distant, hypnotic sliding of paper doors. Let go of the present. Surrender to the embrace of centuries past. You are crossing a bridge woven of starlight and memory, stepping softly into a world made entirely of patience, beauty, and absolute, unending, tranquil peace. Rest peacefully now. Before we step quietly across the old wooden threshold into the weaver's domain, I invite you to join our quiet sanctuary. If you find solace in these forgotten shadows, if the slow unwinding of history brings peace to your restless mind, consider subscribing to this channel. By choosing to stay with us, you are weaving your own thread into a growing tapestry of gentle listeners who seek refuge in the beauty of the past. Let this be your designated haven, a place you can always return to when the modern noise grows too loud. Gently touch the like button as softly as a weaver guides a thread of pure silk to let me know you are resting comfortably. Your quiet support allows me to continue unearthing these deep sleeping corners of history, brushing away the dust of centuries to reveal the glowing embers of long ago. As you settle deeper into your pillows, feel the warmth of belonging to a community that values the exquisite slowness of time. There are no demands here, no expectations, only the steady rhythm of a story unfolding just for you. So, make yourself completely at home. Adjust your blankets one final time, feeling their soft weight grounding you to the mattress. Let your breath synchronize with the slow, methodic swaying of the looms we are about to discover. Our journey into the silk-woven night is just beginning, and I am honored to walk this lantern-lit path entirely by your own peaceful side. The night air in Nishijin does not merely surround you, it holds you. It is an embrace woven from the quiet exhalations of ancient trees and the lingering memory of wood smoke from evening hearths. As you stand before the workshop, the sheer stillness of the year 1720 settles over your shoulders like a heavy, comforting cloak of spun charcoal. The sky above is a canvas of the deepest, most unfathomable indigo, vast and smooth, uninterrupted by the frantic pulse of anything modern. Pinned against this dark expanse are stars that do not twinkle with restless energy, but rather glow with a steady, ancient calm, their silvery light taking centuries to travel down and brush against the curvature of the clay roof tiles. These tiles, known as kawara, are layered like the protective scales of a dormant, benevolent dragon. Each curved piece of fired earth bears the subtle, unique imperfections of the artisan's hand who molded it, their glazed surfaces catching the starlight and transforming it into a soft, diffused luminescence that ripples across the roofline. Beneath this protective canopy, the architecture of the silk-weaving workshop stands as a testament to the supreme virtue of patience. The facade is constructed of hinoki, the revered Japanese cypress, a wood that does not merely age but matures, gathering character and dignity with every passing season. In the daylight it might appear a weathered, humble brown, but here, under the gentle caress of the moonlight, it transforms. The grain of the wood emerges as a hypnotic map of time itself. If you trace your eyes along the vertical planks, you can see the history of the tree, the tight rings of cold, harsh winters, and the wider spaces of bountiful, rain-soaked springs. The surface is smooth to the eye, polished by decades of soft brushing against the wind, yet it retains a tactile warmth, a silent, woody resonance. There is a specific fragrance that clings to this aged hinoki, a scent that is both clean and deeply earthy, reminiscent of a dense, sacred forest just after a heavy downpour, mingled with a faint, almost imperceptible trace of camphor and the sweet, dry dust of antiquity. It is a scent that immediately signals to the nervous system that there is nothing left to fear, nowhere else to be, and absolutely nothing more to do but simply exist. Hanging across the entrance, acting as a soft, permeable barrier between the sleeping street and the quiet industry within, is the Noren curtain. It is woven from thick, unbleached hemp, a fabric that speaks of the earth and the hands that worked it. The colour is a soothing, natural ecru, the shade of dried grass under a late autumn sun. It does not hang perfectly straight, rather it responds with slow, deliberate grace to the invisible currents of the night air. Every so often a phantom breeze, too gentle to even be felt upon your cheek, will cause the heavy fabric to sway, a mesmerizing pendulum motion that mimics the slow, rhythmic beating of a relaxed heart. The movement is fluid, heavy and silent, an invitation that requires no words. As you step closer, the texture of the Noren becomes apparent in the dim light. The thick threads are visible, crisscrossing in a sturdy, reliable grid, a humble contrast to the impossibly fine silk that is borne just beyond its threshold. Below your feet, the ground transitions from the packed earth of the street to a path of smooth, rounded river stones, the Tobi-ishi. These stepping stones were placed not with mathematical precision, but with an intuitive understanding of the human stride, forcing whoever walks upon them to slow down, to look down, to become completely present in the exact moment of stepping. The stones are cool and solid beneath your soft footsteps. Some are a deep charcoal grey, smooth as glass, while others possess the speckled, mottled appearance of a quail's egg. Between these ancient stones, soft, emerald velvet moss has claimed its territory. The moss is thick and springy, a microscopic forest that thrives in the damp, shaded environment of the Kyoto nights. It absorbs the dew, holding moisture like tiny, living sponges, releasing a subtle green aquatic aroma that mixes perfectly with the dry scent of the wooden building. To your right, flanking the entrance, is a shoji screen door, slid tightly shut against the night, the wooden lattice frame, incredibly delicate and meticulously joined without a single iron nail, forms a grid of perfect, satisfying squares. Stretched taut across this framework is the washi paper. This is no ordinary paper. It is crafted from the inner bark of the mulberry tree, beaten and washed in icy mountain streams until it becomes a substance of pure, translucent magic. From the outside, the shoji appears as a pale, glowing rectangle, illuminated from within by a single solitary lantern left burning to guide the weavers through their silent hours. The paper diffuses the golden light perfectly, stripping away any glare and reducing it to a soft, honeyed aura. You can see the chaotic, beautiful tangle of the mulberry fibers trapped within the paper itself, a testament to its organic origin. Occasionally, the silhouette of a falling leaf or the shadow of a passing night moth will drift across the surface of the glowing paper, a fleeting shadow puppet show performed exclusively for the empty street. The silence of this place is not an absence of sound, it is a profound presence. It is a rich, textured quietude composed of 1,000 microscopic auditory details. If you tune your ears entirely to the frequency of the past, you can hear the incredibly faint, rhythmic settling of the wooden joints deep within the building's structure, a sound like a ship adjusting to a calm sea. You can hear the singular, resonant plink of a water droplet falling from the edge of the clay roof into a stone basin below, a sound that occurs exactly once every minute, marking time not with anxiety but with meditative regularity. You can hear the slow, deliberate whisper of the night breeze moving through the distant bamboo groves, a sound that mimics the ocean's gentle rushing against a distant shore. As you stand before the heavy hemp Noren, the threshold of the workshop beckons. The air seems to grow even stiller, heavy with the promise of the incredible artistry hidden within. The scent of the aged cypress deepens, wrapping around you, drawing you into its calming influence. You raise your hand, moving with the slow, exaggerated fluidity of someone submerged in deep, warm water. Your fingertips brush against the rough, reassuring texture of the hemp fabric, It feels grounded, real, tethering you to this moment in history. You slowly push the fabric aside. The heavy cloth yields with a soft, brushing sound against the wooden doorframe, a sound like an extended, peaceful exhalation. You are stepping over the boundary, leaving the sleeping world of Kyoto behind and entering the sacred, timeless space of the weavers. The darkness inside is rich and inviting, pooling in the corners of the room like dark liquid velvet. The air here is slightly warmer, carrying a new, complex bouquet of scents. The sharp, metallic tang of natural dyes, the subtle, sweet musk of raw silk, and the faint, lingering aroma of green tea leaves resting in a ceramic pot. You have arrived. You are entirely enveloped in the sanctuary, and the silent hours of creation are about to slowly, beautifully unfold before you. Every muscle in your body recognizes that there is nowhere else to go, nothing else to achieve. You are simply here, a witness to the profound, quiet beauty of the past, as the first part of our journey settles into your bones, heavy and sweet as honey. As the heavy hemp curtain falls back into place behind you with a muffled, satisfying thud, the transition is absolute. You are now fully submerged within the belly of the weaving workshop. The visual landscape before you is a masterclass in shadows and soft illumination, a stark, soothing contrast to the blinding artificial lights of the era you have left behind. The main chamber, the doma, is expansive, yet it feels incredibly intimate, cocooned by the dark, aged wood of the walls and the massive exposed beams that crisscross the ceiling far above. These beams, rough-hewn and darkened by decades of hearth smoke, look like the ribs of some ancient, benevolent leviathan sheltering the artisans below. The air in this room hangs still and heavy, dense with a profound sense of purpose and the accumulated silence of countless nights just like this one. The primary source of light in this vast expanse is a series of undone lamps, strategically placed near the massive wooden looms. These lamps are simple, elegant structures of dark wood framing translucent panels of oiled paper. The oil makes the paper slightly more transparent, allowing a warmer, more golden hue to bleed through into the darkness. Inside each lamp sits a small ceramic dish filled with rapeseed oil, within which floats a slender wick of soft pith. The flame is small, shaped like a perfect, trembling teardrop of brilliant amber. It does not flicker erratically, but rather burns with a steady, enduring devotion, casting a pool of liquid gold upon the immediate surroundings while allowing the rest of the room to retreat into deep, restful obscurity. The light from these lamps is incredibly soft. It does not reveal the sharp edges of objects, but rather caresses their curves, rounding off the corners of the world and softening every shadow. As your eyes slowly adjust to this gentle gloom, the sheer scale and complexity of the wooden looms begin to emerge from the darkness. They are magnificent, imposing structures, skeletal and intricate, built entirely from sturdy oak and smooth, polished cherry wood. The wood of the looms has been rubbed smooth by generations of calloused hands, absorbing the natural oils of the weaver's skin until the surfaces possess a deep, satin luster that seems to glow with an inner warmth. The looms are a bewildering network of posts, beams, treadles, and harnesses, a mechanical forest of perfectly balanced tension. Hundreds of thin, taut cords run vertically and horizontally, creating a complex geometry that tricks the eye in the dim light. They look like grand, silent instruments, waiting for a master musician to coax out their complex, hidden melodies. The smell of the room is intoxicating, a hypnotic blend of organic materials that immediately lowers your heart rate. The most prominent scent is that of the raw silk itself. It is a surprisingly complex aroma, sweet, slightly musky, and distinctly animalic, holding the faint, dry scent of the mulberry leaves the silkworms consumed. It is a soft, powdery smell that seems to coat the back of your throat with a gentle warmth. Layered beneath the scent of the silk is the rich, astringent smell of natural dyes. Somewhere in the back of the workshop, large wooden vats hold concoctions of fermented indigo, crushed madder root, and boiled safflower petals. The air carries the faint, earthy tang of these botanical pigments, a smell reminiscent of damp soil, crushed bark, and dried herbs hanging in a darkened shed. The combination of the sweet silk and the earthy dyes creates an olfactory environment that is completely unique to this time and place, anchoring you firmly in the sensory reality of 1720. To your left, running the length of the room, is the raised wooden floor covered in tatami mats. The tatami is a marvel of natural engineering, constructed from tightly woven rush grass stretched over a thick core of packed rice straw. The mats provide a subtle, yielding firmness beneath the feet, and they exude a wonderful grassy fragrance that evokes memories of open fields under a hot summer sun, even here in the dead of night. The surface of the tatami is meticulously clean, the tightly woven fibers forming a perfect, satisfying grid of pale green and faded yellow. The boundary between the hard, packed earth of the doma and the soft, elevated tatami is clearly defined by a polished wooden step, a threshold within a threshold, delineating the space of dirty work from the space of clean, precise craftsmanship. Focus your attention on a single andon lamp resting near the closest loom. The light from this lamp illuminates a small woven basket sitting on the tatami. The basket is made from split bamboo, the strips woven together with incredible precision, creating a tight, resilient container. Inside the basket sit dozens of wooden bobbins, each wound with silk thread. The light catches the silk, and the effect is nothing short of mesmerizing. The silk is not simply colored, it seems to hold the color within itself, radiating it outward. There is a bobbin of deep imperial crimson, a red so rich and saturated it looks almost like congealed blood, absorbing the lamplight into its velvety depths. Next to it sits a bobbin of brilliant, piercing azure, a blue derived from the finest indigo, shimmering like the surface of a deep ocean trench touched by a solitary ray of sun. And then there are the threads of pure gold, actual gold leaf wrapped around a core of silk, gleaming with an opulent metallic fire that defies the darkness of the room. The interplay of light and shadow on these spools of silk is a hypnotic dance. As the tiny flame of the lamp shifts minutely on its wick, the highlights on the curved surfaces of the thread travel slowly back and forth, a slow-motion ripple of illumination. It is a tiny, localized spectacle of immense beauty, a secret revealed only to those who have the patience to sit quietly and simply watch. The longer you stare at the silk catching the light, the more your thoughts begin to untangle. The chaotic knot of anxieties that you carried from the modern world begins to loosen, thread by thread, mirroring the smooth, perfect tension of the silk wound around the wooden spools. There is an incredible stillness in this moment. The weavers are not yet at their stations, the workshop is holding its breath. The only movement is the agonizingly slow drift of dust motes suspended in the golden beam of the andon lamp. These microscopic particles, perhaps fragments of silk or dust from the clay floor, float upward in a chaotic, weightless ballet, rising on the imperceptible thermal currents created by the tiny flame. Watching them drift and spin in the silent air is profoundly mesmerizing. They move with an utter lack of urgency, governed only by the gentle physics of the sleeping room. Your breathing begins to slow down to match the pace of the drifting dust motes, in, slow and deep, filling your lungs with the scent of cypress and sweet silk. Out, slow and long, releasing the tension from your jaw, your neck, your shoulders. The golden glow of the silk chamber has wrapped around you entirely, a warm, protective shell that insulates you from all worries, all fears, and all the hurried demands of tomorrow. You are safe, you are sinking deeper. As you stand anchored in the golden pool of light near the first loom, your gaze begins to trace the intricate anatomy of the sleeping beast before you. To understand the profound peace of this space, one must understand the astonishing complexity hidden within the stillness. The wooden structure is a masterpiece of tension and balance, a physical manifestation of perfect mathematical harmony. Allow your eyes to drift upward, past the heavy, polished treadles that rest near the packed earth floor, up toward the upper framework, the yagura which reaches toward the shadowed ceiling like the branches of an ancient petrified tree. From these upper beams hang the heddles, thousands of incredibly fine suspended cords, each possessing a tiny eyelet through which a single solitary thread of silk must pass. The sheer number of these threads is overwhelming to the rational mind, yet profoundly soothing to the soul that seeks immersion. Imagine a torrential rainstorm suddenly frozen in time, suspended in mid-air within the wooden frame. That is what the warp, the vertical threads stretching from the front to the back of the loom, resembles. There are thousands of them stretched drum-tight. They are as thin as spider silk, yet when massed together they form a semi-transparent wall of shimmering tension. Tonight, the warp on this particular loom is a deep, bruised violet, the color of a twilight sky just before it surrenders entirely to night. As you step closer, moving with excruciating slowness so as not to disturb the heavy air, you can see the individual threads vibrating with an almost imperceptible hum of stored energy. The tension of the warp is maintained by heavy weights hanging at the rear of the loom, stones pulled from the local Kamo River, smoothed by centuries of flowing water, and now bound by thick hemp rope. These stones provide a constant, unyielding pull, ensuring that the silk remains perfectly straight, perfectly aligned. The relationship between the delicate, ethereal silk and the heavy, grounding river stones is a beautiful paradox. It is the marriage of extreme fragility and unyielding mass. The stones pull downward, tethering the fabric to the earth, while the silk stretches taut, aspiring upward toward the upper beams. It is in this perfect, balanced tension that the beauty of the weave is born. Your eyes travel along the purple expanse of the warp threads, moving horizontally until they encounter the reed, the osa. This is a heavy, rectangular comb-like tool suspended in front of the weaver's position. It is crafted from hundreds of slivers of seasoned bamboo bound tightly together with pitch and twine. The spaces between the bamboo slivers are microscopic, perfectly uniform. Every single one of the thousands of warp threads must pass through these impossibly narrow gaps. The reed serves a dual purpose. It keeps the warp threads evenly spaced, and it is used to violently beat the horizontal weft threads into place, packing them down tightly to create a solid fabric. Yet at rest, the bamboo reed hangs completely still, a menacing instrument of precision that currently slumbers. Resting on the slanted wooden board beneath the reed is the shuttle. It is a smooth, boat-shaped piece of dense heavy wood, usually boxwood or persimmon, carved to aerodynamic perfection. The wood is polished to a glass-like finish, designed to glide frictionlessly through the narrow shed, the space created when certain warp threads are lifted and others are lowered. Nestled inside the hollowed-out belly of the wooden shuttle is a small bobbin wound with the weft thread, the horizontal element that will bind the violet warp together. Tonight, the bobbin holds a thread of brilliant, pure silver. Consider the journey of that single silver thread. Before it arrived in the hollow belly of the smooth wooden shuttle, it began as an extrusion from a tiny, blind creature. It was unwound from a cocoon boiled in hot water, a single continuous filament stretching for over a mile. It was spun together with other filaments to gain strength, washed to remove its natural stiffening gum, and then dyed. The silver color was not easily achieved. It required a precise, agonizingly slow process of binding ground oyster shells and fine soot to the silk fibers using a fermented persimmon tannin. The thread is a physical record of time, labor, and alchemical transformation. And now it waits in the darkness, perfectly coiled, a reservoir of potential energy. Imagine the motion that is yet to come. The weaver's foot will depress a treadle, separating the purple warp threads with a soft wooden clatter. The hand will throw the heavy shuttle. It will shoot across the width of the loom, a silver bullet flying through a tunnel of purple tension, leaving a trail of silver behind it. The heavy bamboo reed will swing forward, striking the new thread with a solid resonant thwack, driving it home. Clatter, swoosh, thwack. Clatter, swoosh, thwack. It is a hypnotic, driving rhythm that becomes a mantra for the mind and body. But right now, in the silent hours of 1720, there is no clatter, there is no swoosh, there is no thwack, there is only the profound, heavy anticipation of the rhythm. The silence highlights the microscopic details. If you lean in very close to the purple warp, close enough to feel the faint coolness radiating from the taut threads, you can perceive the tiny fuzzy halo that surrounds each individual strand of silk. Even tightly spun, silk retains a microscopic roughness, a texture that catches the dim light of the andon lamp and diffuses it, giving the mass of threads its characteristic soft glow. You can smell the faint, lingering scent of the rice paste used to size the warp, a starchy, comforting smell that mixes with the deep woodiness of the loom. As you step away from the golden radius of the andon lamp near the loom, the darkness of the workshop seems to thicken, wrapping around you like a cool, heavy shawl. You are moving deeper into the belly of the building, drawn by the invisible pull of the earth itself. The temperature here drops by a subtle but distinct degree. The dry, woody warmth of the hinoki cypress and the sweet, powdery scent of raw silk slowly give way to something far older, far more elemental. You are approaching the dyeing quarters, a space not merely of craft, but of slow, silent alchemy. The floor beneath your feet transitions from the smooth, raised wooden boards to large, irregular slabs of dark, wet slate. These stones are cold and grounding, slick with the accumulated moisture of decades of work. If you look closely in the faint ambient light bleeding over from the main chamber, you can see that the stones are not just grey, they are stained with phantom shadows, deep, indelible blooms of blue and crimson where countless droplets have fallen and been absorbed over the centuries. In the heart of this damp, cavernous space sit the vats. They are colossal wooden cylinders, sunk waist-deep into the earthen floor to maintain a constant, steady temperature. These are not mere containers, they are living ecosystems, constructed from thick vertical staves of aged cedar. The vats are bound together not by iron, which would corrupt the delicate chemistry of the dyes, but by immensely thick bands of braided bamboo. The bamboo is woven with an aggressive, muscular tension, locked in an eternal struggle against the outward pressure of the hundreds of gallons of liquid contained within. The cedar wood itself is completely saturated. On the outside, it is a deep, bruised purple-black, covered in a velvety sheen of moisture. You reach out a hand, your movements agonizingly slow in the heavy air, and press your fingertips against the curve of the nearest vat. The wood is cool, slick, and unyielding. It feels dense, heavy with the weight of its own history, radiating a profound, silent stability. Lean over the edge of the vat, and you are met with a scent that instantly bypasses the rational mind and speaks directly to ancient instincts. It is the aroma of indigo, the aizome. It is a smell that defies simple description. It is deeply earthy, redolent of rich, freshly turned soil after a heavy autumn rain. Yet it carries a sharp, almost metallic tang like the scent of ozone right before a thunderstorm. Beneath the earth and the ozone lies a surprising, fleeting sweetness, a faint fermented musk that reminds you that this liquid is not static but alive. The dye is born from the leaves of the indigo plant, composted, fermented, and awakened with wood, ash, lye, and sake. It breathes, it consumes, and it rests. Tonight, the liquid within the vat is resting. The surface of the dye is perfectly, impossibly still, a mirror of absolute fathomless blackness. It is so dark that it seems to absorb the sparse light around it, pulling your gaze down into a deep, bottomless well of tranquility. But as your eyes adjust, you begin to notice the subtle textures upon this dark mirror. Clinging to the inside rim of the wooden vat, floating just above the surface of the black liquid, is the AI banner, the indigo flower. This is the frothy, iridescent foam created by the fermentation process. In the dim light, the bubbles of the AI banner shimmer with phantom colors. They are not blue, but a metallic, coppery purple, catching microscopic glints of light and reflecting them back with a muted, oil-slick gleam. It is a cluster of tiny, fragile domes, completely silent, forming and popping at a pace so glacial it cannot be perceived by the naked eye. Resting across the top of the vat is a heavy, stirring pole, the Kamar maze, carved from a single branch of dense oak. The pole has been used so often for so many years that its original shape has been completely smoothed away. The end that plunges into the dye is worn down to a gentle, rounded nub, stained an unfathomable shade of blue-black that is darker than the night sky outside. The handle, where countless artisans have gripped it, is polished to a glass-like smoothness by the oils of their skin. It rests diagonally across the diameter of the vat, a silent guardian over the sleeping liquid. You can imagine the immense physical effort required to plunge that heavy pole into the dense dye, the rhythmic, hypnotic circular motion needed to stir the sleeping indigo, awakening the color from its deep slumber. But now there is no effort, there is no motion. The pole rests, the liquid rests, and you too are invited to share in this profound heavy rest. To the side of the indigo vat, lined up against the damp stone wall, are the baskets. They are woven from wide strips of split cane, sturdy and practical. Inside these baskets lie the skeins of silk that have already taken the plunge. They are no longer the pure gleaming white or the golden yellow of their raw state. They have been submerged, squeezed, exposed to the air and submerged again, undergoing a violent, transformative process that is now completely finished. The skeins lie coiled in the baskets like sleeping serpents. Even in the near darkness, the depth of their color is staggering. It is a blue so profound, so saturated, that it almost hurts the eyes to look at it. It is the color of the deep ocean trench, the color of a midnight sky far from any city, a blue that absorbs all worry and leaves only silence in its wake. The silk is slightly damp, and if you were to touch it, it would feel heavy and cold, utterly relaxed, its fibers having absorbed the very essence of the earth and the night. Look up from the baskets toward the ceiling of the dye room. The beams here are lower than in the main chamber, oppressive and comforting at the same time. Hanging from these blackened wooden ribs are long bamboo poles, from which the dyed fabric is hung to dry. Tonight, the poles are empty, but the memory of the fabric lingers in the air. You can almost see the ghostly silhouettes of long panels of silk dripping slowly onto the stone floor, their heavy wet hems swaying with the microscopic currents of air. The rhythmic, slow, imagined sound of the dye falling back to the earth is a detail that exists entirely to deepen your trance. It is the sound of time passing, not in frantic seconds or minutes, but in heavy liquid drops, each one stretching the moment out into an eternity of peace. Still in this cool, damp sanctuary, allow the scent of the fermented indigo to fill your lungs completely. It is a grounding scent, pulling your energy away from your racing mind and down into your body, anchoring you to the wet slate floor. The silence here is thicker than in the front of the workshop. It is insulated by the heavy moisture in the air, muffled by the presence of the massive vats of liquid. It is a silence that presses against your eardrums with a soft velvet weight. You are witnessing the pause between breaths, the absolute stillness that must exist before creation can begin again. The alchemist's work is done for the day. The colors have been bound, the silk has been transformed, and there is nothing left to do but allow the deep, abiding darkness to embrace it all. As you stand among the slumbering vats, your own breathing mirrors the slow, unseen biological processes happening within the cedar walls. You are sinking down into the cool, dark comfort of the dye room, completely safe, entirely unseen, and blissfully, profoundly sleepy. The heavy weight of the blue surrounds you, holding you gently as you drift further away from the waking world. Beyond the deep, heavy stillness of the dye room, a faint silvery luminescence beckons you forward. It is not the warm, golden glow of the oil lamps, but a cooler, more ethereal light, filtering through a narrow opening at the very rear of the workshop. You move toward it, your footsteps making no sound on the damp stone path. You are stepping out of the enclosed, womb-like darkness of the interior and into the threshold of the Subo-niwa, the tiny, enclosed courtyard garden that serves as the quiet, breathing lungs of the traditional Kyoto townhouse. This garden is not meant for walking. It is a meticulously curated micro-landscape, a three-dimensional painting designed to be viewed from the silent shadows of the Engawa, the narrow wooden veranda that borders it. As you slide open the heavy wooden rain doors, the amado just a fraction of an inch, the night air rushes in to greet you. It is entirely different from the air inside the workshop. It is crisp, pure, and carries the sharp, unmistakable scent of imminent frost mingling with the deep green aroma of wet leaves and ancient undisturbed soil. The courtyard is tiny, perhaps no larger than a few tatami mats in size, yet it feels infinitely expansive. It is surrounded on all four sides by the dark, weathered walls of the adjoining buildings, creating a perfect vertical wooden shaft that reaches up to capture a single solitary rectangle of the magnificent night sky. The stars here seem incredibly remote, framed perfectly by the sharp, geometric lines of the sloping clay roofs. The light from a hidden moon, though completely out of sight, reflects off the invisible atmospheric moisture, painting the entire garden below in shades of muted silver and deep, restful charcoal grey. Your eyes are immediately drawn to the central anchor of the garden, an ancient stone lantern, the Ishidoro. It is not a tall, imposing structure, but rather low and squat, nestled intimately among the ground cover. The granite is deeply pitted and weathered, its original sharp edges beautifully softened by centuries of soft rain, howling wind, and the relentless, slow crawl of nature. The lantern is heavily cloaked in thick moss, a velvet carpet of luminous emerald green that seems to glow with its own internal light in the silvery gloom. The moss is incredibly detailed. If you were to kneel and bring your face close, you would see a microscopic forest of tiny feathery fronds, each holding a singular perfect droplet of midnight dew. The cap of the lantern resembles a broad, sloping mushroom, casting a deep, absolute shadow over the light box below. Tonight, the lantern remains unlit, a silent, moss-draped guardian meditating deeply in the darkness. Beside the lantern sits a shozubachi, a low, roughly hewn stone water basin. The stone is a dark, porous volcanic rock, speckled with pale, quartz-like inclusions that look exactly like trapped fallen stars. The basin is filled to the absolute brim with pure rainwater, its surface a perfect, unbroken mirror, reflecting the rectangular sliver of the cosmos above. The water is impossibly still, resembling a heavy disk of polished black glass rather than a liquid. Draping over the edge of the stone basin is a single, slender length of hollowed bamboo, perfectly angled to act as a spout. This spout is part of a shishi-odoshi, a traditional mechanism meant to sound a rhythm, but in this profound nocturnal silence, its usual hollow clack has been deliberately silenced. The flow of water has been reduced to an agonizingly slow trickle, a testament to the weaver's deep, abiding respect for the quiet hours. Focus your entire being on the end of that pale bamboo spout. The wood glows faintly against the dark stone backdrop. At its carefully cut tip, a single drop of water is slowly, meticulously forming. It gathers volume with excruciating slowness, swelling and stretching downward, clinging to the rim of the bamboo by sheer delicate surface tension. The droplet captures the ambient silver moonlight, becoming a tiny trembling jewel, a miniature upside-down world containing the distorted reflection of the entire courtyard. It swells further, stretching into a perfect heavy teardrop, holding on for one impossible second longer, and then finally the tension breaks. The droplet falls through the empty air. It plunges into the glass-like surface of the basin with a sound that is impossibly soft, yet incredibly distinct. Plop. It is a rounded, liquid, deeply satisfying sound, a tiny musical note striking perfectly against the canvas of the silence. Immediately, a series of concentric, circular ripples expands outward from the microscopic point of impact, softly warping the reflected starlight, traveling across the surface until they hit the rough stone edge and gently rebound. The surface shimmers for a long hypnotic moment, a delicate dance of disturbed water, before slowly, gradually returning to its original state of perfect glassy stillness. You wait, your breath caught gently in your chest, anticipating the next drop. The bamboo tip is bare, but slowly, imperceptibly, the moisture begins to gather once again. The wait is not anxious, it is profoundly meditative. The gap between the drops is a tangible thing, a stretched-out cord of pure, unadulterated time. Plop. Another drop falls. Your heartbeat begins to naturally synchronize with this slow, eternal rhythm. The frantic, rushing pace of the waking world dissolves completely, washed away by the incredibly slow, measured falling of water upon quiet water. Standing in the corner of this tiny universe is a single, solitary Japanese maple tree, the momiji. Its trunk is slender and deeply twisted, bearing the graceful, elegant posture of a dancer forever frozen in mid-motion. The bark is smooth and pale, wrapping tightly around the dense wood. It is deep autumn, and though the colors are muted in the moonlight, You can vividly sense the deep burning crimson of the delicate star-shaped leaves. The leaves form a lacy layered canopy overhead, creating a complex shifting pattern of shadows against the pale paper of the shoji screens nearby. As the invisible nocturnal breeze breathes softly through the courtyard, the branches of the maple sway with a dry rustling sound. It is a whisper, a secret, ancient language spoken only by the leaves and the wind. The sound is incredibly fragile, a paper-thin rustle that brushes gently against your ears like the softest, most delicate silk. Occasionally, a single, exhausted leaf will detach itself from a high branch. You watch its descent, a slow spiraling fall through the silver light. It does not plummet, it drifts, floating effortlessly on the heavy air, tracing a chaotic, beautiful, lazy path downward. It lands upon the surface of the stone basin with absolutely zero sound, a silent, crimson boat resting lightly upon the black, mirrored water. It floats there, motionless, a perfect emblem of absolute surrender. The leaf has gracefully let go of the tree, surrendering completely to gravity, surrendering to the turning season, surrendering to the quiet, inevitable ending of its cycle. As you sit resting on the polished wooden edge of the Ingawa, your feet hovering just above the cool earth of the courtyard, you feel a profound sense of isolation, but an isolation that is deeply comforting and entirely welcome. You are sealed away in a perfectly balanced, harmonious capsule of nature, safely contained within the protective walls of human craftsmanship. The chill of the air is wonderfully refreshing, a gentle reminder of the physical world, yet you remain completely warm and insulated in your quiet observation. The rhythmic, agonizingly slow dripping of the water from the bamboo spout, the soft, dry rustle of the maple leaves, the deep, luminous silence of the damp moss. Every single element in this tiny space is conspiring to pull you gently down into a state of absolute, untroubled rest. Your mind, once a turbulent, stormy sea of thoughts, is now as still and reflective as the water in the stone basin. You are simply watching, listening, and breathing, completely synchronized with the profound, sleeping heartbeat of 1720. The night stretches endlessly above the courtyard, and you are entirely free to simply let go, drifting further and further into the silken, shadowy, peaceful depths of sleep. As you reluctantly, slowly draw your gaze away from the mesmerizing, solitary water droplet falling in the shadowed courtyard, a faint, comforting scent begins to beckon you back into the deeper interior of the house. It is a dry, profoundly warm aroma distinct from the damp earth of the dye room and the cold, starry air of the garden. It is the unmistakable, deeply domestic scent of softly roasting tea leaves and ancient resting ashes. You turn from the sliding wooden rain doors, your movements matching the slow, heavy, molasses-like pace of the sleeping world around you. You glide silently across the polished cypress floorboards, following the invisible ribbon of this warm fragrance. It leads you into a small, intimately proportioned alcove nestled just off the main weaving chamber, a space completely dedicated to the quiet restoration of the weary artisan's spirit. In the dead center of this small room lies the irori, the traditional sunken hearth. It is a square pit dug directly into the floor and lined with heavy, fire-hardened clay. The perimeter of the hearth is framed by 4 thick, deeply polished logs of Zelkova wood. These logs have served as a resting place for thousands of tired hands and aching feet over the decades, their upper surfaces rubbed to a glassy, incredibly smooth finish that reflects the dim light like dark, liquid honey. The wood is warm to the touch, having absorbed the gentle heat of the hearth fires for so long that it seems to radiate a permanent, comforting thermal memory of its own. Within the square pit of the irori, the landscape is a mesmerizing miniature desert of pure, pristine white. This is the accumulated ash of countless carefully tended fires. It is not dirty or grey, but a soft, powdery, luminous white, resembling a bed of finely ground chalk or the softest, driest snow. The surface of the ash has been meticulously, obsessively raked into beautiful rhythmic patterns by the master weaver before retiring for the evening. The lines are perfectly parallel, curving gently around the center, resembling the raked gravel of a miniature Zen garden. This pristine landscape is a testament to the reverence the weavers hold for the fire, treating the ash not as waste but as a beautiful, necessary resting bed for the glowing embers. Buried deep within this protective bed of white ash, breathing slowly in the center of the rake patterns, are 3 solitary pieces of binchotan, the highest quality white charcoal. They are not blazing with a chaotic, consuming flame. Instead, they are sleeping, radiating a steady, deep, penetrating heat. The charcoal is incredibly dense, possessing a metallic sheen even in the darkness, and it burns completely without smoke. In the gloom of the alcove, these 3 pieces of charcoal look like softly breathing ruby-red hearts. Their glow is not a harsh, flickering light, but a deep, throbbing crimson that pulses ever so slightly with the microscopic, invisible currents of air moving through the room. If you stare directly into the heart of the glowing charcoal, the intense, pure redness seems to imprint itself gently on your retinas, creating a sensation of profound, heavy warmth that spreads from your eyes all the way down into your chest. Suspended high above this sunken hearth, hanging from a heavy, smoke-blackened wooden beam, is the jizaikagi, an adjustable hearth hook. It is a mechanism of beautiful, rustic engineering, consisting of a hollow bamboo pole through which an iron rod is threaded. At the bottom of the rod hangs a large, intricately carved wooden fish. This wooden carp, swimming eternally in the dry, warm air above the fire, acts as a lever and a counterweight, allowing the height of the hook to be adjusted with smooth, frictionless precision. The wood of the fish is completely saturated with the smoke of 100 years, rendering it a deep, impenetrable black, its scales smoothed down to a soft, tactile surface. Hanging securely from the iron hook above the glowing ruby-red charcoal is the tetsubin, a traditional Japanese cast-iron kettle. The kettle is heavy, squat, and incredibly solid, embodying the very essence of groundedness and permanence. Its surface is not smooth, but cast with a complex tactile pattern known as arare, meaning hailstone. Thousands of tiny uniform iron bumps cover the exterior, catching the faint red glow of the charcoal below and casting microscopic dancing shadows. The iron is aged, possessing a beautiful, deep brownish-black patina that speaks of constant use and meticulous, reverent care. The silence in the room is broken only by the sound emanating from within the heavy iron belly of the tetsubin. It is not a violent, rolling boil, but a delicate, complex sound deeply revered in traditional Japanese culture, often referred to as matsukaze, or the wind in the pines, because the heavy kettle is hung perfectly over the gentle heat. The water inside simmers with a slow, agonizingly rhythmic consistency. The sound is a continuous, soft, airy hiss, layered with the occasional deep, resonant thrum as a single heavy bubble of air forms at the bottom of the cast iron and gently detaches, rising through the water to break the surface. It is a sound that perfectly mimics the soughing of a gentle, continuous breeze moving through a vast, dense forest of ancient pine trees. It is a white noise of the most organic variety, incredibly effective at washing away the frantic, clinging thoughts of the modern world. Resting on a small, smooth wooden board next to the hearth are the simple tools for the midnight tea. There is no formal ceremony here, no guests to impress, only the deeply personal, quiet ritual of a solitary worker seeking a moment of respite. There is a small, airtight canister made of dark, polished cherry bark. Next to it rests the chashaku, a tea scoop carved from a single slender piece of bamboo. The bamboo has bent gracefully with age, and the tip that scoops the tea is stained a permanent, faint green. Beside the scoop is the chazen, the bamboo whisk, a masterpiece of delicate craftsmanship, where a single cylinder of bamboo has been split into dozens of impossibly fine, curled tines. But it is the tea bowl itself, the chawan, that commands the most attention. It is a heavy, asymmetrical ceramic bowl possessing a rustic, unrefined beauty. The glaze is thick and uneven, a dark, muddy green that mimics the moss growing on the stones outside. In the dim red light of the charcoal, the bowl looks like something pulled directly from the earth, solid, heavy, and deeply comforting to hold. Imagine the slow, deliberate process of making the tea, the soft, scraping sound of the bamboo scoop against the inside of the cherry bark canister, the tiny whispered sigh as the vibrant emerald green powder of the matcha is deposited into the dark, heavy bowl. the slow, careful tilting of the heavy iron kettle, the water pouring out in a thin, continuous silver ribbon, hitting the green powder with a soft, muted sizzle. And then, the rhythmic, hypnotic swish, swish, swish of the bamboo whisk, beating the water and the powder together until a thick, rich, pale green froth rises to the surface. To hold that heavy, warm bowl in both hands is to hold a perfect sphere of comfort. The ceramic transfers the deep heat of the water directly into the cold skin of your palms, relaxing the tight tendons and soothing the weary joints. As you bring the bowl slowly to your lips, the steam rises, carrying the profound, grassy, slightly bitter, and deeply oceanic aroma of the high-quality matcha. It is an ancient scent, one that grounds the soul and settles the stomach. Taking a slow, measured sip, the warmth spreads down your throat, pooling like liquid sunshine in the center of your chest. In this small, warm alcove, listening to the wind in the pines singing from the iron kettle, watching the red hearts of the charcoal breathe beneath the white ash, every single muscle in your body finally completely yields. The tension is melting, dissolving, and being carried away on the fragrant steam, leaving you entirely hollowed out, peaceful and profoundly beautifully heavy with sleep. Leaving the encompassing, enveloping warmth of the hearth behind you, drift back toward the vast, expansive darkness of the main weaving chamber. The air cools instantly against your skin, a refreshing, crisp contrast that serves to heighten your awareness of the profound silence. As you move silently along the edge of the raised tatami platform, your eyes, now completely accustomed to the deep, indigo gloom, begin to pick out the subtle, ghostly traces left behind by the artisans who breathe life into this space during the waking hours. To observe a workshop at rest is not to look at an empty room, it is to read a silent, intricate language written in the arrangement of tools, the wear on the wood, and the heavy, lingering energy of focused human labor. The weavers themselves are long gone, resting in their own quiet quarters, but their presence saturates every single square inch of the heavy, still air. Your attention is drawn first to the main entrance, the wide set of sliding wooden doors where the hard-packed earth of the doma meets the raised, polished step leading to the tatami. Arranged in a perfectly straight, meticulous line along the edge of the earth floor is the footwear. In the faint ambient starlight filtering through the paper screens, you can count the pairs of wooden sandals, the gita and the woven straw sandals, the zori. They sit absolutely motionless, a silent, disciplined regiment standing at attention in the dark. Look closely at a single pair of wooden gita. They are carved from solid blocks of light, buoyant paulownia wood resting on two horizontal wooden teeth. The wood is pale, but the top surface where the bare foot has pressed against it day after day is stained a dark, smooth honey brown by natural skin oils and the sweat of exertion. The straps, the hanao, are made of braided cotton, dyed a faded utilitarian indigo. You can see the exact shape of the owner's foot permanently pressed into the fabric, the strap twisted slightly to accommodate the unique curve of a toe. Some of the wooden teeth are worn down slightly on the outer edge, indicating a weaver who walks with a slight outward roll to their step. These inanimate objects are profoundly biographical. They are hollow molds of the humans who wear them, currently empty, waiting with an agonizing, beautiful patience for the dawn. The absolute stillness of the lined-up shoes is a powerful visual anchor. It reinforces the fact that all forward motion, all travel, all pacing and rushing has ceased completely for the night. The journey is over. It is time to stay exactly where you are. Move your gaze slowly upward to the polished wooden floorboards of the corridor that runs alongside the massive looms. These boards are cut from enormous ancient cypress trees laid down with zero space between them. Over the decades, the constant rhythmic pacing of the weavers moving back and forth to fetch silk, check tensions and consult patterns has physically altered the geography of the floor. There is a distinct undulating pathway worn directly into the thick wood. The center of the boards is slightly dished, a shallow microscopic valley created by the friction of a million soft cotton-clad footsteps. In the faint golden light spilling from the single remaining andon lamp, this worn pathway possesses a deep, reflective luster that the surrounding wood lacks. It looks like a slow, dark river of polished amber flowing silently through the middle of the room. If you were to run your hand lightly across the surface, you would feel the subtle, incredibly smooth dip, a physical record of time passing and repetitive, dedicated motion. Tracing the path with your eyes is deeply hypnotic. Your gaze slides effortlessly along the smooth, continuous groove, following the invisible footsteps of the past, a motion that lulls the mind into a state of rhythmic, unthinking trance. It is a visual lullaby, the physical manifestation of a calming, repetitive melody played out in solid wood. Now drift closer to one of the massive, slumbering looms. Specifically, look at the weaver's bench, a simple, thick plank of oak suspended at precisely the right height for the intricate dance of the hands and feet. Resting squarely on the center of the wooden plank is the zabuton, the traditional floor cushion. This is not a standardized, identical piece of equipment. It is an intensely personal island of comfort. The cushion is covered in thick, dark blue cotton, the fabric significantly faded and worn thin exactly where the weaver's weight is concentrated. The texture of the cushion is a masterpiece of microhistory. You can see the tiny, meticulous stitches of sashiko embroidery, a running stitch of thick white thread used to reinforce the heavily worn areas. The stitches are perfectly spaced, creating a beautiful geometric pattern of interlocking diamonds across the faded blue background. In one corner there is a small, neat patch woven from a slightly different shade of indigo, evidence of a tear carefully, patiently mended. The cushion is significantly flattened, shaped entirely by the body that inhabits it for 12 hours a day. It sags perfectly in the center, a permanent, soft indentation that silently screams of stillness, of sitting in one place for an eternity, of unyielding, singular focus. Staring at the heavy, sunken shape of the cushion, your own body feels a sympathetic pull, a deep, heavy urge to sit down, to sink into a soft surface, and to absolutely stop moving. Beside the cushion, resting on a small built-in wooden shelf attached to the frame of the loom, lies the weaver's personal toolset. These are not the massive structural components of the loom, but the intimate handheld instruments of the craft. There is a pair of heavy forged iron scissors, the nigiri basami. They possess a unique U-shaped spring design meant to be squeezed in the palm rather than operated with fingers in rings. The iron is dark and cold, the blades honed to a terrifying microscopic sharpness, capable of snipping a single strand of raw silk with a satisfying, almost inaudible snick. Next to the scissors lies a small, flat piece of incredibly dense boxwood, polished to a mirror shine, used for burnishing and smoothing the finished silk, and resting closest to the cushion is a tiny, delicate brush made of soft horsehair, used to gently sweep away the invisible microscopic dust that gathers on the taut warp threads. The arrangement of these tools is profoundly deliberate. They are not scattered haphazardly, they are placed with the geometric precision of a surgeon's tray. The scissors are exactly parallel to the edge of the shelf. The burnishing wood is perfectly centered. The brush lies pointing exactly toward the front of the loom. This obsessive, meticulous orderliness is deeply soothing to the anxious mind. It speaks of a world where everything has its designated place, where chaos is entirely banished, and where the environment is under absolute calm control. There are no surprises here, no sudden alarms, no frantic searching for lost items. The tools wait in perfect, silent alignment, secure in the knowledge that they will not be disturbed until the sun rises. The cumulative effect of observing these ghostly traces, the perfectly lined-up sandals, the smoothly worn river of the floorboards, the deeply indented blue cushion, and the meticulously aligned iron tools, is a sensation of overwhelming heavy peace. You are bathing in the lingering, resonant energy of extreme focus and dedication. The space is completely devoid of noise, yet it hums with a silent, incredibly slow vibration of purpose. The absence of the weavers does not make the room feel empty. It makes it feel full of a profound, restful anticipation. The rhythm of the unseen hands has ceased, leaving behind a perfectly composed, static, still life. The air is thick and sweet with the smell of old wood and resting silk, and as you breathe it in, your own pulse slows to match the dormant heartbeat of the silent, waiting workshop. The night is holding its breath, and you are entirely free to let yours out, a long, slow exhalation that carries away the last remaining threads of your wakefulness. As you drift away from the sleeping heavy forms of the magnificent looms, a subtle shift in the architecture gently guides your path. The expansive, high-ceilinged space of the main weaving hall tapers, funneling you toward a smaller enclosed room at the very back of the wooden structure. This is the Izu, the drafting room, a sanctuary of supreme intellectual focus and quiet, solitary creation. Here the chaotic, organic beauty of the natural world is meticulously translated into the rigid, uncompromising mathematics of the grid, preparing it to be woven into the physical reality of the silk. You slide the exceptionally lightweight paper door open, and the scent that greets you is entirely distinct from the sweet silk and earthy dyes. It is a profound, incredibly dry and deeply intellectual aroma. It is the complex, penetrating fragrance of aged sumi ink, resting quietly in the dark. The room is tiny, dominated almost entirely by a low, wide, slanted wooden desk that stretches across the entire length of the back wall. The wood of this desk is pale and completely unvarnished, scrubbed clean every single night, possessing a soft, porous texture that seems to absorb the silence of the room. Resting upon this slanted surface is the mongami, the pattern paper. In the faint ambient glow filtering through the transoms above, the paper appears as a vast, pale landscape waiting to be explored. This is no ordinary paper. It is thick, heavy, and layered, created by pasting several sheets of incredibly strong mulberry washi together with a paste made from fermented persimmon juice, the kakishibu. This natural lacquer gives the paper a subtle, muted amber tint and a remarkable leathery durability, ensuring it will withstand the thousands of times it will be referenced, touched, and consulted by the weavers. If you lean in close, resting your hands gently on the edge of the smooth wooden desk, you can observe the astonishing surface of the mongami. It is not blank. It is covered in a microscopic, relentlessly perfect grid. Thousands upon thousands of tiny, perfect squares are ruled across the amber surface, drawn with a pale, ghostly blue ink. The lines are thinner than a human hair, yet they possess an absolutely unwavering straightness. This grid is the geographical map of the future fabric. Every single intersection of these pale blue lines represents a single crossing of one vertical warp thread and one horizontal weft thread. To look at this vast, infinite grid is to look at a visual representation of eternity. The repetitive, microscopic geometry creates an optical illusion in the dim light. The tiny blue squares seem to vibrate gently, a subtle, hypnotic hum that draws your eyes in and refuses to let them go, pulling your mind down into a state of profound, singular focus. Resting gracefully near the edge of the paper is the architect of this dreamscape, the writing brush, the fude. It rests on a small, delicately carved bridge of dark, heavy ebony wood, elevating the tip so that it never touches the desk. The handle of the brush is made of slender, spotted bamboo, perfectly balanced and incredibly light, designed to act as a seamless extension of the master draftsman's own fingers. But it is the bristles that hold the true magic. They are a carefully blended mixture of soft sheep hair and stiff weasel hair, tapering to an impossibly fine, perfectly sharp point. Even now, resting in the dry air, the brush holds its shape flawlessly, a tiny, elegant spear of soft fur. You can almost feel the phantom ghost of the master's hand holding the bamboo, the incredibly slight controlled pressure required to paint a single tiny square of the grid. The motion is so small, so precise, that it borders on meditation, a silent mantra repeated thousands of times over the course of a single quiet night. Next to the brush lies the inkstone, the suzuri. It is a heavy rectangular block of dark grey slate, quarried from the depths of a cold, remote mountain river. The stone is incredibly dense and cool to the touch, possessing a smooth, silky surface that is beautifully, slightly hollowed out at one end to form a shallow pool. Resting on the flat, elevated section of the stone is the stick of sumi ink. It is a solid, dry block, midnight black, decorated with faintly moulded golden characters that catch the non-existent light. The ink is an alchemical marvel, crafted from the finest, softest soot gathered from burning pine branches, deeply mixed with a natural animal glue and subtly scented with precious camphor and clove. The aroma of the sumi is intoxicating in the enclosed space. It is deeply woodsy, smelling of ancient forests and cold, crisp winter air, layered with the sharp medicinal clarity of the camphor. It is a scent that clears the mind of all fog, sharpening the senses while simultaneously slowing the pulse. Imagine the slow, hypnotic process of preparing the ink. The artist drips exactly 3 drops of pure, clear water into the hollow of the slate. Then, holding the ink stick perfectly vertical, they begin to grind it against the wet stone in a slow, continuous circular motion. The sound of the grinding is a soft, rhythmic shh, 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 a whisper of stone against stone that acts as an auditory sedative. As the stick grinds, it dissolves, turning the clear water into a deep, glossy, completely opaque black liquid. The ink is not just a color, it is a physical substance, thick and rich, carrying the memory of the pine tree and the fire. Look back at the amber Mongami paper. A portion of the immense grid has already been filled in, using the impossibly fine tip of the brush and the deep black sumi ink. The master has painted a pattern square by tiny square. It is a slow, pixelated translation of a natural motif. Tonight, the pattern taking shape is that of stylized swirling water. The Sigaiha wave. The curves of the waves are built entirely from tiny staggered black boxes. From a distance, the eye blends the tiny squares together, seeing the smooth, elegant, continuous flow of the water. But up close, in the extreme intimacy of the drafting room, you see the mathematical truth. You see the isolated individual dots of black ink sitting inside their pale blue boundaries. The contrast between the rigid, unyielding grid and the organic, flowing shape of the wave is deeply philosophical, a beautiful metaphor for the weaver's life, finding harmony, beauty, and flow within a strict, unchanging framework. Your eyes trace the black squares, following the curve of the painted wave as it rises, crests, and falls across the paper, up and down, rise and fall. It is a visual representation of breathing, of an incredibly slow, rhythmic exhalation. The sheer amount of time, patience, and silent, unbroken concentration required to paint this pattern is staggering. It is a physical manifestation of slowness. As you stare at the delicate, precise geometry of the Mongami, the chaotic, fragmented thoughts of the modern world begin to pixelate and dissolve. The massive, overwhelming anxieties that you carried with you are broken down into tiny, manageable squares, and then gently, quietly erased by the encroaching darkness. The profound, heavy silence of the drafting room acts as a thick, soft blanket wrapping around your shoulders. You are absorbed into the microscopic details, the texture of the aged persimmon paper, the scent of the pine soot ink, the flawless point of the dormant brush. There is nothing to decide here, nothing to fix, nothing to accomplish. The pattern is already drafted, the ink is already dry. You are simply a witness to the profound mathematical piece of the design, slowly sinking down further and further into the soft, logical, deeply comforting geometry of your own impending dreamless sleep. Just as your mind completely surrenders to the hypnotic, static geometry of the drafting room, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift occurs in the atmosphere of the entire workshop. It is a change you feel in your bones before you actually hear it. The previously still, dry air suddenly grows heavy, taking on a plush, velvety density. The ambient temperature drops by a single cooling fraction of a degree, and an entirely new, incredibly complex scent begins to infiltrate the deep, woody aroma of the cypress and the sweet musk of the silk. It is petrichor, the ancient elemental fragrance of dry earth yielding to moisture. It smells of crushed stone, dormant moss suddenly awakening, and the clean, ozone-rich breath of a descending cloud. You step slowly back out onto the polished wooden ingawa that borders the small courtyard garden, drawn by the invisible magnetism of the shifting weather. You sit heavily on the edge of the smooth, aged wood, your feet dangling just inches above the smooth, round stepping stones of the Suboniwa, and then it begins. The first solitary drop of rain falls from the vast, dark expanse of the night sky. It strikes a perfectly curved, glazed clay tile on the roof high above with a sharp, resonant tink. The sound is crisp, isolated, and entirely clear, echoing faintly in the quiet, enclosed space of the courtyard. A few seconds stretch out, an agonizing, beautiful pause of pure anticipation. Then another drop falls. Tink. Then another, striking a wooden beam with a softer, deeper thud. Tink, thud, tink. The rhythm is initially chaotic, hesitant, a slow, searching percussion, exploring the complex acoustic landscape of the ancient townhouse. Gradually, with the exquisite slowness of a rising tide, the isolated drops begin to multiply, blending and merging into a continuous, soft, hushed murmur. It is not a violent storm, but a gentle, steady, melancholic Kyoto autumn rain, known as shiga. The sound of the shiga falling upon the vast expanse of the layered clay roof tiles is profoundly soothing. It is a vast, heavy blanket of white noise that immediately isolates the workshop from the rest of the sleeping world, wrapping the building in an impenetrable sonic cocoon. The continuous shh of the rain is organic, textured, and deeply resonant, masking any stray sudden noises and creating an environment of absolute unbroken auditory safety. As the rain intensifies from a murmur to a steady, heavy shower, the true acoustic magic of the traditional Japanese dwelling reveals itself. Your attention is drawn away from the vast, generalized sound of the roof and focuses entirely on a delicate vertical line of copper hanging from the eaves directly in front of you. This is the kusari doi, the rain chain. It serves as a beautiful musical alternative to a closed gutter downspout. The chain is composed of a series of meticulously crafted, tiny, fluted copper cups, linked together by heavy copper rings, stretching from the edge of the roof all the way down to a large, decorative ceramic jar resting among the moss. The copper is ancient, fully oxidized by years of exposure to the elements, its surface covered in a stunning mottled patina of deep verdigris, a pale, luminous mint green that glows softly in the dim, silvery light of the rainy night. Watch as the water gathers in the wooden gutter above and finally tips over the edge, finding the very top of the rain chain. A clear, heavy ribbon of water pours into the first tiny copper cup. As the cup fills to the brim, the water cascades beautifully over its scalloped edges, sliding down the copper link and dropping smoothly into the second cup. From the second to the third to the fourth, the water travels downward in a mesmerizing liquid staircase. The motion is incredibly fluid, a continuous, shimmering, silvery rope of falling water that catches the faint ambient light and sparkles against the dark backdrop of the wooden walls. But it is the sound of the rain chain that is truly hypnotic. It is not the harsh, rushing roar of water in a pipe. It is a delicate, intricate, deeply musical composition. As the water strikes the copper, it creates a series of bright, ringing, liquid notes, because there are dozens of cups, and the water is falling through them continuously. The sound is a cascading, overlapping, endless sequence of tiny, hollow splashes, gurgle, plink, plash, trill. It sounds like a chorus of tiny, silver bells being played by a soft, erratic breeze, or the gentle, continuous babbling of a miniature metallic brook. The rhythm is entirely unpredictable, rising and falling with the microscopic fluctuations in the intensity of the rain, yet it possesses a fundamental underlying consistency that is intensely relaxing to the nervous system. You lean back slightly against the smooth, vertical wooden pillar of the Ingawa, letting your head rest heavily against the solid hinoki cypress. The air in the courtyard has become saturated, thick with mist, and the profound, deeply green scent of the soaked moss and the wet black soil. The delicate, star-shaped leaves of the Japanese maple tree are now heavy with moisture, their dry rustling completely silenced. Instead, they weep silently, gathering the rain into large, heavy drops at their pointed tips before releasing them, one by one, to join the chorus below. Inside the workshop, behind you, the environment subtly responds to the arrival of the rain. The silk, a highly sensitive organic material, breathes in the newly humid air. The microscopic fibers relax and expand infinitesimally. The taut, violent tension of the deep purple warp threads strung across the massive looms softens just a fraction of a degree, letting out a microscopic silent sigh. The heavy wooden joints of the building itself, the ancient beams and the massive pillars, seem to absorb the moisture, swelling slightly and locking even tighter together, making the sanctuary feel incredibly secure, deeply anchored to the wet earth. The sound of the sugar rain and the musical babbling cascade of the copper rain chain merge to create a powerful, irresistible lullaby. It is a sound that speaks of shelter, of being inside while the world outside is wet and cold, of being perfectly, profoundly safe. The heavy, velvety air presses against your skin, a comforting weight that encourages your muscles to completely let go. Your breathing synchronizes entirely with the continuous, rushing hush of the falling water, in, slow and deep, filling your lungs with the scent of wet stone and clean rain. Out, a long, heavy release, letting all remaining thoughts be washed away and carried down the verdigris copper chain into the dark, waiting earth. You are suspended in a perfect, timeless moment, completely enveloped by the serenade of the silk rain, sinking deeper and deeper and deeper into the warm, heavy, absolute comfort of the silent, rainy night. As the hypnotic, continuous rhythm of the rain chain anchors you firmly in a state of profound, heavy lethargy, your eyes slowly wander from the wet, glistening courtyard back into the deep, dry shadows of the workshop's interior. Tucked away in a dark, seemingly forgotten corner, nestled securely between two massive, load-bearing cedar pillars, is a space that commands a different kind of quiet reverence. It is not a place of mechanical tension like the looms, nor a place of alchemical transformation like the dye vats. It is a space of pure, silent gratitude. This is the Kamedana, the small Shinto shrine dedicated to the spirits of the silk, and specifically to Ashira-sama, the ancient deity of the silkworm. You push yourself away from the Engawa with agonizing slowness, your body feeling deliciously heavy as if moving through deep, warm water. You glide softly across the tatami mats toward the recessed alcove. The shrine is elevated, mounted on a beautifully polished shelf of blonde keaki wood, positioned just above eye level so that one must look up slightly, naturally tilting the head in a posture of gentle submission and respect. The structure of the miniature shrine itself is a breathtaking marvel of micro-architecture. It is a perfect, flawless replica of a grand Shinto sanctuary, scaled down to the size of a small wooden box. Carved entirely from pristine, unvarnished hinoki cypress, the wood is so pale it seems to glow with its own internal lunar light in the deep gloom of the corner. The roof of the tiny shrine features sweeping, elegant curves, mirroring the massive clay tiles of the workshop itself, but crafted from delicate, impossibly thin shingles of shaved wood. The tiny wooden doors, the tobira, are closed, keeping the sacred interior hidden, but the craftsmanship is so precise that you cannot even see the seam where the two doors meet. Two minuscule, beautifully detailed wooden foxes, the messengers of the gods, sit silently guarding the entrance, their sharp silhouettes perfectly frozen in eternal vigilance. The atmosphere immediately surrounding the altar is thick with a scent that is entirely unique to this singular corner of the building. It is the deep, resinous, profoundly spiritual aroma of high-quality sandalwood incense, though there is no smoke currently rising. The wood of the shelf and the surrounding cedar pillars have absorbed the fragrant smoke of thousands of morning and evening rituals. It is a scent that is simultaneously grounding and uplifting, a dry, dusty sweetness that bypasses the busy, analytical parts of the brain and speaks directly to the deep, silent, ancient centers of the mind. It smells of quiet temples, of old resting paper, and of time standing absolutely still. Resting on the polished wooden shelf directly in front of the closed doors of the miniature shrine are the offerings, the shinsen. They are arranged with a fastidious, symmetrical perfection that is immensely deeply pleasing and soothing to observe. In the exact center sits a tiny, pristine white porcelain plate holding a small mound of pure, uncooked white rice. The rice grains are perfect, unbroken ovals, catching the ambient light and glowing softly like a pile of microscopic pearls. Flanking the rice are two tiny matching porcelain bottles. The haishi, filled to the brim with clear, pure rice sake. The surface of the porcelain is incredibly smooth, cold to the touch, and completely flawless. But it is the offering placed just to the side that truly anchors this shrine to the surrounding workshop. Resting on a small folded square of rough natural hemp cloth is a single perfect dried mulberry leaf. It is crisp, brittle, and faded to a beautiful pale sage green. Resting gently upon the surface of this dry leaf is a single empty cocoon. It is a perfect, unbroken oval of pure raw silk, incredibly light, possessing the pale, luminous color of a winter moon. This small, weightless shell is the origin of everything in this building. It is the physical vessel of the silkworm's sacrifice, the tiny silken tomb that yielded the miles of thread waiting on the looms. To look closely at the cocoon is to witness a miracle of natural engineering. The surface is not smooth but composed of thousands upon thousands of microscopic, interlocking threads, spun in a continuous figure-eight motion by the tiny creature over several days of relentless, silent labor. The texture is slightly fuzzy, incredibly soft to the imagination, and deeply, profoundly delicate. It is a visual representation of absolute vulnerability and total transformation. The master weaver placed it here not just as a symbol, but as a genuine, heartfelt expression of thanks to the tiny, silent workers who gave their lives to create the beautiful, shimmering bolts of cloth. Below the shelf, resting on the floor, is a small, heavy bronze bell, the suzu, attached to a thick, brightly woven silk rope. During the day, the weaver would ring this bell to call the attention of the kami, a sharp, clear, resonant sound that pierces the busy noise of the workshop. But now, in the silent hours, the rope hangs completely motionless. The bronze bell is dull and heavy, absolutely silent, a sleeping instrument of prayer. You can vividly imagine the deep, resonant, lingering vibration of the bell, a sound that slowly fades into nothingness, leaving the air even quieter than before. The memory of the sound is almost more relaxing than the sound itself, an auditory ghost that gently rocks the mind. Standing before this miniature sanctuary, bathed in the lingering scent of ancient sandalwood and the faint silvery light reflecting off the white porcelain and the pale cocoon, a profound sense of humility washes over you. It is a feeling of being a very small, very quiet part of a much larger, incredibly ancient, and perfectly ordered system. There is no ego here, no striving, no desperate reaching for the future. There is only a quiet, heavy gratitude for the present moment and a deep respect for the materials of the earth. You lower your head slightly, mirroring the posture of the countless artisans who have stood in this exact spot over the centuries. Your shoulders drop completely, releasing the last stubborn knots of tension. The air is so incredibly still here, undisturbed even by the gentle breathing of the rain outside. The pale, luminous cocoon resting on the dry leaf becomes the absolute center of your universe, a tiny, glowing oval of pure peace. You stare at it until your vision begins to blur softly at the edges, your eyelids growing heavier and heavier, pulled down by the gentle, gravity-like force of absolute, profound tranquility. You are safe. You are grounded, and the silent, comforting embrace of the deep sleep is now pulling you beautifully, softly under. Stepping slowly back from the profound, reverent stillness of the tiny wooden shrine, your path gently arcs toward another distinct zone within the vast shadowed ecosystem of the workshop. The sound of the autumn rain outside continues its steady, hushed murmur, a distant, watery curtain that perfectly insulates this inner world. You glide across the tightly woven rush grass of the tatami mats, moving toward the preparation area, a space entirely dedicated to the meticulous organizing and tensioning of the raw thread before it ever reaches the massive, complex architecture of the looms. Here, resting in the muted, silvery gloom, are the otomaki, the traditional wooden winding wheels. In the busy daylight hours, this corner is a blur of frantic rotational energy and the high-pitched humming song of taut strings cutting through the air. But now, in the deepest hollows of the night, the wheels stand completely paralyzed, frozen monuments to the fundamental physics of circles and spirals. There is a singular hypnotic beauty to a mechanical object at total, absolute rest. You approach the nearest itomaki, moving with the slow, exaggerated caution of a sleepwalker. The base of the machine is a heavy, rectangular block of solid, aged chestnut wood, sitting squarely upon the floor to provide a completely unshakable foundation. The wood of this base is dark, almost black in the dim light, its dense grain having absorbed decades of spilled oil, settling dust and the ambient moisture of the Kyoto air. It feels profoundly heavy just to look at it, a visual anchor that pulls your own center of gravity downward, deeply grounding you to the floor. Rising from this heavy base are two vertical pillars of slightly paler cherry wood, gracefully tapered, holding the axle of the great wheel between them. Focus your eyes entirely upon the large wooden drive wheel itself. It is a masterpiece of rustic geometry, perhaps 3 feet in diameter, constructed without a single piece of metal hardware. The outer rim is a perfect continuous circle formed from steamed and carefully bent layers of flexible ash wood. The surface of this rim is polished to a glass-like smoothness, but it is not a sterile perfection. It is a smoothness born of endless repetitive friction. If you were to run the hypersensitive pads of your fingertips along the outer curve, you would feel the microscopic, undulating grooves left by the drive band, a physical memory of a million invisible revolutions. Connecting the outer rim to the central wooden hub are a series of slender, delicately turned spokes. Each spoke is identical, shaped on a hand lathe to possess a gentle swelling curve in the center before tapering to meet the rim. In the incredibly faint light, these spokes look like the intricate webbing of a massive, dormant spider, perfectly spaced, capturing nothing but the heavy, quiet air. Wrapping snugly around the smooth outer circumference of the large wooden wheel is the drive band. This is not a leather belt, but a thick, incredibly strong cord braided from raw, unbleached cotton. The cotton has lost its initial stiffness over years of relentless use. It is now soft, slightly fuzzy, and stained a pale, ghostly grey by the microscopic particles of dust and wood it has encountered on its endless journey. The tension of this band is a delicate, precise science. Even now, at rest, the cotton cord is pulled perfectly taut, stretching across the empty space to wrap around the tiny, grooved whorl of the iron spindle situated a few feet away. The physical tension of the cord is palpable. It is a trapped, dormant energy, yet because nothing is moving, this tension does not provoke anxiety. Instead, it is deeply reassuring, a symbol of perfect, unwavering connection between two distant points. Follow the pale line of the cotton drive band across the dark space until it reaches the spindle mechanism. Here, the architecture changes from warm organic wood to cold, unforgiving metal. The spindle is a slender, needle-like rod of hand-forged iron. It rests horizontally, supported by two small, intricately carved wooden posts. The iron is dark, matte, and possesses a subtle metallic smell that cuts faintly through the woody aroma of the room, a sharp, clean scent reminiscent of cold river stones and winter air. Slipped over the pointed end of the iron spindle is a small, empty wooden bobbin, a hollow cylinder of bamboo waiting patiently to be filled with spun silk. Resting on the heavy chestnut base, situated exactly halfway between the great wooden wheel and the iron spindle, is a tiny, shallow ceramic dish. It is a piece of rough, unglazed earthenware, its porous surface stained a deep, translucent amber. Inside this dish rests a tiny, tightly rolled piece of raw cotton, deeply saturated with Tsubaki Abura, pure cold-pressed camellia oil. This is the lifeblood of the machine, the natural golden lubricant that prevents the friction of the iron spindle from burning the wooden posts. If you lean down, bringing your face close to the base of the machine, you can smell it. The scent of the camellia oil is profoundly unique and deeply comforting. It is a rich, nutty, almost floral aroma, incredibly heavy and smooth, lacking any of the harsh, volatile sharpness of modern chemical lubricants. It smells of ancient grooming rituals, of polished wooden combs, and of deep, undisturbed botanical silence. Imagine, for a fleeting moment, the motion that is currently suspended. The worker sits upon the small three-legged wooden stool positioned in front of the wheel. The right hand grasps the small wooden crank attached to the main hub. With a smooth, practiced thrust, the great wheel begins to turn. The pale cotton drive band blurs into a solid line of grey. The energy is transferred across the void, multiplying exponentially as it hits the tiny iron wall. The metal spindle spins with a terrifying, invisible velocity, creating a high-pitched, sustained hum, a singing, vibrating note that fills the air. The left hand guides the delicate raw silk thread, feeding it onto the spinning wooden bobbin, creating a perfectly even, cylindrical cocoon of color. The sound is a hypnotic drone, a rhythmic whir-a-click that dictates the heartbeat of the winding room. But tonight the silence is absolute. The absence of that high-pitched whirring song makes the quietude of the room feel incredibly dense, almost tangible. You're not merely standing in a quiet room, you're standing in the negative space of sound. The contrast between the intense kinetic potential of the machine and its current state of total paralyzed slumber is profoundly relaxing. It is a physical manifestation of a deep, exhausted exhale. The work is done, the wheels have stopped turning. The endless, cyclical journey of the thread has been completely halted. As you stand there, your own breathing naturally slows down to match the absolute zero velocity of the room. A stray beam of pale, filtered moonlight, having somehow navigated the heavy clouds and the slatted wooden rain doors, falls gently across the itemaki. It casts a complex, elongated shadow of the wheel's spokes across the pale, woven surface of the tatami mat. The shadow is sharp and incredibly still, a dark, geometric flower blooming on the floorboards. You trace the lines of the shadow with your eyes, following the dark, static spokes from the center hub out to the curved rim. It is a visual maze with no exit and no urgency, a puzzle that requires no solving. You simply follow the lines around and around, sinking deeper into the visual hypnosis. The cool, sharp scent of the iron, the heavy, nutty aroma of the camellia oil, and the profound, beautiful stillness of the wooden wheel combine to pull you down into a state of immense, heavy gravity. Your limbs feel like solid oak, your mind feels as smooth and unblemished as the polished rim of the wheel, and the dark, comforting embrace of sleep draws ever closer, pulling you softly into its quiet, unmoving center. Leaving the paralyzed, beautiful geometry of the spinning wheels behind, you are drawn deeper still into the very heart of the compound, far away from the entrance, far away from the street, and completely isolated from the soft, pattering rain outside. You are moving toward the kura, the traditional earthen storehouse. This is the ultimate sanctuary, the heavily fortified vault where the magnificent finished bolts of silk, the culmination of all the agonizing labor, the delicate drafting, the pungent dyeing, and the rhythmic weaving, are kept safe from fire, theft, and the ravaging dampness of the Japanese climate. The journey to the kura takes you down a narrow, covered wooden corridor, the Watari Roka, a transitional space where the polished interior floorboards give way to wide, rough-hewn planks of dark cedar. The temperature drops noticeably as you walk this corridor. The air loses its plush, rainy humidity and becomes incredibly crisp, dry, and profoundly still. You are leaving the realm of human activity and entering a space designed specifically for the preservation of inanimate perfection. At the end of the corridor stands the entrance to the kura. It is a visual shock after the delicate paper and wood architecture of the main house. The walls of the storehouse are immensely thick, built from a lattice of woven bamboo coated in multiple heavy layers of clay and mud, and finally finished with shikui, a brilliant, blindingly white traditional plaster made from slaked lime and seaweed extract. Even in the near-absolute darkness, the white plaster walls seem to emit a faint, ghostly luminescence, standing as a solid, impenetrable fortress against the night. The door to the kura is a masterpiece of defensive engineering. It is not a sliding screen, but a massive, hinged portal. The frame is constructed of thick, stepped layers of fireproof earth and plaster, creating a deep, receding tunnel that leads to the actual doorway. The doors themselves are made of thick, solid Zelkova wood, clad entirely in heavy plates of black, forged iron. The iron is studded with large, rounded rivet heads arranged in meticulously straight, intimidating rows. The visual weight of this door is staggering. It looks as though it would require the strength of a team of oxen to move. Yet, because the hinges are so perfectly, masterfully forged and balanced, if you were to reach out and grasp the heavy iron ring handle, the massive door would swing open with a smooth, silent, ghostly glide. Imagine pulling that heavy iron ring. The door yields, opening inward with a soft, deep rush of displaced air, like a giant sleeping lung exhaling. You step over the high, raised wooden threshold, a physical barrier designed to keep out drafts and pests, and cross into the absolute deadening silence of the vault. The air inside the kura hits your senses with a profound, sudden impact. It is incredibly cool, flawlessly dry, and saturated with a scent so powerful, so distinct, that it instantly clears every single wandering thought from your mind. It is the overwhelming, medicinal, and deeply protective aroma of kusunoki, pure aged camphor wood. The smell of camphor is not sweet, nor is it particularly floral. It is sharp, deeply woody, and incredibly clean, possessing an almost icy, mentholated quality that expands instantly within your lungs. It is a scent that aggressively repels decay, insects, and the ravages of time. In this concentrated, sealed environment, the camphor acts as an olfactory sedative, numbing the anxieties of the outside world and inducing a state of profound, clear-headed calm. It smells of hidden treasures, of closely guarded secrets, and of perfect, unchanging preservation. As your eyes adjust to the absolute pitch-black darkness of the windowless interior, you begin to perceive the faint outlines of the storage furniture. Lining the thick earthen walls are the kiri-tansu, traditional chests of drawers crafted entirely from paulownia wood. Paulownia is a miracle material for archiving. It is incredibly lightweight, surprisingly porous, and possesses an uncanny ability to expand in humid weather, perfectly sealing the drawers and protecting the delicate contents from moisture. The wood is left completely unfinished, its surface a pale, ghostly grey, possessing a soft, almost velvety texture to the touch. The grain of the paulownia is wide and beautifully subtle, looking like pale, undulating waves frozen in the timber. The chests are stacked meticulously, forming silent, geometric towers of pale wood against the dark walls. The only interruptions on the smooth, unvarnished surfaces are the drawer handles, the kakute. These are geometric, perfectly square handles forged from matte black iron, their sharp, clean lines providing a stark, satisfying contrast to the pale, soft wood. The joinery of these chests is invisible, constructed with wooden pegs and flawless interlocking cuts, ensuring a fit so tight that pushing one drawer closed will often cause another drawer to silently, slowly slide open, pushed by the trapped, escaping air. Within these pale, silent drawers rests the ultimate treasure of the workshop. Imagine sliding one of the heavy, smooth drawers open. The friction of wood sliding against wood creates a low, resonant, immensely satisfying thrumming sound. Inside, the space is completely filled. But you do not see the blinding, brilliant colors of the silk directly. Every single finished bolt, the tanmono, is meticulously wrapped in a protective sheath of tatoshi, a specially folded heavy washi paper. This paper is a slightly mottled, creamy yellow, possessing a crisp, dry texture that rustles beautifully like autumn leaves when touched. The tatoshi is tied closed with a simple, thin ribbon of soft, undyed cotton. To look upon these neatly stacked, paper-wrapped rectangles is to look upon a state of absolute final rest. The incredible violence of the boiling cocoons, the chaotic, smelly alchemy of the dye vats, the terrifying tension of the warping frames, and the deafening rhythmic clatter of the heavy looms, all of that immense focused energy has been funneled down into these quiet, static, perfectly wrapped packages. The transformation is entirely complete. The art has been realized, folded, and put to sleep in the dark. There is no more potential energy here, there is only pure resting perfection. The silence inside the kura is unlike any silence you have ever experienced because of the immensely thick earthen walls. The sound of the rain outside is completely, utterly eradicated. You cannot hear the wind. You cannot hear the shifting of the timber. You cannot even hear the distant, nocturnal heartbeat of the city. The silence is so absolute that you begin to hear the sound of your own nervous system, a faint, high-pitched internal hum. Your breathing sounds incredibly loud in the enclosed space, the air rushing in and out of your lungs with the rhythm of the ocean. Standing in the center of the vault, surrounded by the towering pale chests of camphor-scented wood and the unseen shimmering colors of the resting silk, you feel completely cut off from the stream of time. The past is wrapped up and stored in the drawers. The future cannot penetrate the heavy iron doors. there is only the absolute frozen present. The intense, icy scent of the camphor wood clears away the last remaining webs of your waking consciousness, leaving behind a mind as clean, blank, and perfectly still as the unvarnished Paulownia wood. You are profoundly safe, completely insulated, and the heavy, black velvet darkness of the storehouse wraps around you, a perfect, unyielding cocoon that pulls you smoothly, inescapably down into the deepest, most silent layers of sleep. As you gently release the heavy, cold iron ring of the storehouse door, the massive portal glides perfectly shut, sealing the brilliant, resting silks back into their absolute camphor-scented darkness. You step over the high wooden threshold and begin your slow, silent return down the covered wooden corridor. The transition from the completely static, perfectly preserved atmosphere of the Kura back into the slightly warmer, faintly humid air of the main house is a profound sensory experience. It brings with it a deep philosophical realization about the very nature of the space you are inhabiting. This workshop is not merely a place of physical labor, it is a complex architectural vessel designed specifically for the capture, manipulation, and preservation of time itself. As you walk, your bare feet pressing softly against the wide, dark cedar planks, the concept of time begins to unravel in your mind, losing its harsh modern urgency and expanding into a vast, slow-moving, completely peaceful ocean. In the waking world you left behind, time is a strict, unyielding master. It is sliced into frantic seconds, urgent minutes, and exhausting hours, always pushing you forward, always demanding more, always running out. But here, in the deeply shadowed, silent heart of 1720, time operates under an entirely different set of physical laws. It is a slow, viscous substance, thick as wild honey, pooling in the quiet corners of the room and dripping with agonizing, beautiful slowness from the eaves. To truly understand the peace of the weaver, one must understand their profoundly different relationship with the passage of the hours. They do not fight time. They do not attempt to outrun it. Instead, they surrender to it completely, sinking into its slow current and allowing it to carry them forward at its own unhurried pace. Consider the fundamental material of their craft, the single microscopic thread of raw silk. When you look at a spool of thread resting quietly in the glow of the andon lamp, you are not merely looking at a physical object. You are looking at a physical manifestation of captured time. Every single millimeter of that incredibly fine, shimmering filament represents a specific, isolated moment of pure, silent existence. Before the thread ever reached the wooden loom, it was born from the agonizingly slow, singular focus of the silkworm. For weeks, the tiny creature did nothing but consume the pale green mulberry leaves in absolute silence, growing slowly, accumulating energy, existing entirely in the absolute present moment. There was no anxiety for the future, no regret for the past, only the slow, rhythmic crunching of the leaf. And then, when the time was perfectly right, the creature entered a state of profound, solitary meditation. It began to extrude the liquid silk from its own body, moving its head in an endless, rhythmic, continuous figure-eight motion, round and round, incredibly slowly, trapping itself within a dark, perfectly safe, silken sphere. The thread is the physical record of that meditation. It is a continuous, unbroken timeline of days spent in complete, unyielding darkness and absolute, perfect stillness. When the master weaver takes that raw thread and begins to wind it onto the heavy wooden bobbins, they are literally holding days of silent, concentrated effort between their calloused fingertips. They are unspooling history, stretching it out across the room, and preparing to weave it into a new, complex reality. To sit at the massive wooden loom for 12 hours a day, throwing the heavy shuttle back and forth with a monotonous, unchanging rhythm, requires a complete dissolution of the modern ego. The weaver cannot be anxious about finishing the bolt of cloth. If the mind rushes forward, desperate to see the end result, the hands will tremble, the tension of the warp will become uneven, and the microscopic flaw will be permanently recorded in the silk. The only way to achieve the flawless, fluid perfection required by the merchants of the ancient capital is to exist entirely, exclusively, in the single moment of the throw. The past is the woven cloth rolling up around the heavy wooden beam at their waist. The future is the tightly stretched, unwoven threads of the warp stretching out toward the front of the loom, but the weaver themselves exists only in the exact singular fraction of a second where the shuttle flies through the gap, the present moment, the nakazutsu. They are the bridge between what has been and what will be. Their entire life is dedicated to living entirely within that microscopic sliding window of the present. This profound, unrelenting focus on the immediate task gently erodes the sharp edges of the ego. The artisan does not sign their name to the finished bolt of magnificent glowing silk. There is no personal glory, no desperate reaching for individual fame. The beauty of the fabric belongs to the collective, to the tradition, to the long lineage of masters and apprentices stretching back through the centuries. The weaver is simply a temporary, humble vessel through which the ancient knowledge flows. Their identity dissolves into the rhythm of the wooden clatter, their personal anxieties washed away by the continuous rolling wave of the woven pattern. As you stand completely still in the dark hallway, absorbing this heavy, peaceful philosophy, your own relationship with time begins to miraculously soften. The frantic ticking of the clock in your modern life fades into total obscurity, replaced by the slow, resonant, imaginary heartbeat of the dormant looms, you realize, with a profound sense of relief that you do not need to rush toward tomorrow. Tomorrow does not exist here. There is no deadline waiting for you in the shadows, no urgent task that requires your immediate attention. You are allowed completely and unconditionally to simply exist in this long, stretched-out moment of darkness. Imagine your own breathing as the slow, deliberate motion of the wooden shuttle. Inhale. The shuttle glides smoothly through the silken tunnel, a long, continuous intake of cool, peaceful air. Exhale. The heavy bamboo reed pulls forward, packing the moment tightly into place, releasing all the tension from your chest and shoulders. Inhale. The mind expands into the quiet space. Exhale. The body sinks heavily into a state of profound, immovable rest. You are weaving your own tapestry of sleep, thread by slow thread, breath by slow breath. The sheer volume of time available to you in this ancient space is overwhelming. A vast, comforting blanket that wraps around your weary mind. You are safely anchored in the 1720s, surrounded by the physical evidence of ultimate patience, and the incredibly heavy, sweet gravity of sleep is pulling you gently, beautifully, inevitably downward. Moving slowly away from the corridor of the storehouse, you drift back toward the front of the workshop, finding a quiet, recessed alcove near the sliding wooden doors that face the sleeping street. You sink down onto the deeply polished, incredibly smooth cypress floorboards, leaning your back against a thick, vertical support beam. The wood is cool and utterly solid against your spine, a grounding presence that connects you to the earth beneath the foundation. As you sit in the absolute stillness, your mind naturally turns away from the grand, overarching concept of time and begins to focus on the deeply intimate, beautiful philosophy that governs the physical objects surrounding you. This is the realm of wabi-sabi, the profound, quiet appreciation for that which is imperfect, impermanent, and fundamentally incomplete. It is a way of seeing the world that actively rejects the harsh, stressful pursuit of flawless eternity, finding deep, resonant peace in the natural cycle of wear, decay, and quiet fading. In the dim, shifting, silvery light of the late night, you look closely at the interior of the workshop, truly seeing the surfaces for the first time. Nothing here is new. Nothing possesses the sterile, blinding, aggressive perfection of the modern machine-made world. Instead, every single object bears the beautiful, complex scars of its own unique history. The beauty of this space is not a loud, demanding beauty. It is a quiet, whispering beauty that requires patience and total stillness to truly perceive. It is the beauty of the worn, the faded, and the deeply loved. Direct your gaze back toward the resting looms in the main chamber. Consider the massive, heavy wooden shuttle that earlier caught your attention. When it was first carved from the heart of a young persimmon tree, it was perfectly symmetrical, its edges sharp, its surface a uniform, bright orange-brown. But decades of relentless, repetitive use have completely transformed it. The sharp edges have been rubbed incredibly smooth, rounded off by the continuous friction of the silk threads and the soft, fleshy impact of the weaver's catching hand. The wood has absorbed the natural oils of human skin, slowly oxidizing and darkening over the years, transitioning from a bright orange to a deep, complex, incredibly rich mahogany. One side of the shuttle is slightly more worn than the other, subtly asymmetrical, bearing the permanent physical imprint of a specific human being's grasp. To the modern, anxious eye, this shuttle might simply appear old or damaged, but in the deep, quiet philosophy of the ancient capital, this wear is exactly what makes the object profoundly beautiful. The shuttle has acquired Neramui, a soft, comforting patina that cannot be faked or rushed. It has grown into its purpose, shaped by the gentle, persistent forces of life. It is beautiful precisely because it is visibly, slowly returning to the earth from which it came. This acceptance of impermanence is incredibly liberating. It lifts the crushing, impossible burden of maintaining absolute perfection. It allows objects and the people who use them to age gracefully, to become softer, more complex, and more deeply characterful over time. Look down at the tightly woven tatami mats stretching across the raised floor. They are not the vibrant, bright green of fresh, new rush grass. They have faded, bleached by years of filtered sunlight and the passage of the seasons, transforming into a soft, mottled, deeply soothing shade of pale golden brown, the color of a quiet autumn field. The edges of the mats, bound in dark blue cotton cloth, are slightly frayed, the tiny threads giving way after thousands of footsteps. This gentle decay does not diminish the peace of the room, it deeply enhances it. The faded golden color is far softer on the eyes than the bright, demanding green of the new. The frayed edges whisper of a space that has been heavily used, deeply lived in, and thoroughly appreciated. It is a space that does not ask you to be careful, to be pristine, or to be perfect. It only asks you to be exactly as you are. As the deep hours of the night slowly, silently roll past, the celestial mechanics above continue their invisible, majestic turning. The hidden moon, though obscured by the soft autumn rain earlier, has now shifted its position in the vast, dark sky. The rain has stopped entirely, leaving behind a sky of fractured clouds. Occasionally, a pale, milky beam of moonlight manages to pierce through the gaps, filtering down through the transoms and casting long, incredibly slow-moving shadows across the doma, the packed earth floor. You watch one of these shadows cast by a thick, suspended wooden beam. It stretches across the uneven clay, a dark, cool rectangle of absolute nothingness. The movement of the shadow is so agonizingly slow that it cannot be perceived by staring directly at it. You must look away, let your mind drift for several long, peaceful minutes, and then look back only to realize that the dark edge has crept a fraction of an inch further across the floor. This incredibly slow, silent shifting of the darkness is the physical manifestation of the earth slowly turning on its axis. It is a reminder of the massive, unstoppable, deeply comforting cycles of the universe. The shadow is fundamentally impermanent. It exists only because of a specific fleeting alignment of the moon, the clouds, and the wood. When the dawn finally arrives, this specific shadow will vanish completely, never to return in exactly the same shape again. And yet this profound impermanence does not cause sorrow, it brings a deep, incredibly heavy wave of relief. Because if the beautiful, massive objects of the world, the thick wooden beams, the heavy iron tools, the stone basins, are all slowly fading, slowly changing, slowly surrendering to time, then you too are allowed to surrender. The intense, chaotic thoughts that kept you awake, the anxieties about tomorrow, the regrets about yesterday, they are all as fundamentally impermanent as the slow-moving shadow on the clay floor. They are temporary, fleeting phenomena, rising and falling in the vast, quiet space of your mind. You do not need to fight them. You do not need to fix them. You simply need to observe them, acknowledge their temporary nature, and let them slowly fade away into the darkness, just as the wood slowly softens and the silk slowly loses its violent tension. The philosophy of the fading shadow teaches you that nothing lasts, and therefore nothing is truly worth clinging to with white-knuckled desperation. As you sit against the cool cypress pillar, breathing in the dry, woody scent of the old building, you actively practice this beautiful letting go. You allow your muscles to soften, mirroring the worn edges of the wooden shuttle. You allow your mind to fade into a peaceful, golden blankness, mirroring the aged tatami mats. You are embracing the profound, beautiful imperfection of the sleepy moment, and the gentle, heavy darkness is welcoming you, pulling you softly, completely down into the deeply forgiving depths of profound, undisturbed rest. As you remain seated in the deeply shadowed alcove, your back resting heavily against the solid, unyielding support of the ancient cypress pillar, your awareness begins to slowly expand outward. You are no longer just observing the isolated objects within the room, the resting looms, the sleeping wheels, the folded silk. Instead, your mind begins to merge with the structural envelope of the building itself, sensing the profound, invisible history permanently embedded within its very walls. This workshop is not merely a passive container for the artisan's labor. It is a living, breathing archive, a physical manifestation of a continuous, silent lineage stretching back across countless generations. To sit quietly in this space is to be embraced by the ghosts of 1,000 forgotten weavers, not as restless spirits, but as a deeply comforting, heavy blanket of shared human endeavor. If you were to slowly extend your hand in the darkness and press your palm flat against the vertical plane of the inner wall, you would not encounter the smooth, unyielding coldness of stone, nor the flat, lifeless perfection of modern sterile plaster. You would feel the tsuchikabe, the traditional earthen wall. This is a living barrier crafted from the very soil upon which the ancient city of Kyoto rests. This earth was dug by hand centuries ago, heavy and damp, smelling of ancient roots, deep minerals, and subterranean darkness. It was meticulously, agonizingly mixed with water drawn from local wells and chopped rice straw. The golden, brittle stalks of the autumn harvest intentionally broken down and folded into the wet mud to provide structural memory and binding strength. Over the decades, as the mud slowly dried and cured in the gentle Japanese climate, the straw became a vast microscopic skeleton within the wall. In the faint ambient starlight bleeding through the paper screens, the surface of this earthen wall is deeply textured, a microscopic landscape of tiny rolling ridges, shallow valleys, and the ghostly pale yellow flecks of the embedded straw. The texture is rough to the touch, yet incredibly warm, possessing a thermal mass that holds the lingering heat of the day and slowly, generously radiates it back into the cool night air. But this wall holds a deeper, much more beautiful secret than just earth and straw. Because this room has been completely dedicated to the processing of raw silk for over a century, the very atmosphere is permanently saturated with microscopic, invisible fibers. Every time a bobbin was wound, every time the heavy wooden shuttle was violently thrown across the warp, every time a finished bolt of cloth was sharply snapped clean, thousands of invisible, weightless particles of silk were launched into the air. Over the years, over the decades, these microscopic threads drifted slowly, silently downward, settling like a layer of permanent, invisible snow upon every available surface. They settled upon the wooden beams, they settled upon the paper lanterns, and most profoundly they settled into the rough, porous texture of the earthen walls. The clay has literally inhaled the silk. The building is permanently infused with the material of its own creation. If you were to look at the wall under a brilliant beam of concentrated sunlight, you would see it possessing a faint, impossible shimmer, a subtle silvery luminescence created by millions of trapped silk particles catching the light. But here, in the deep, heavy darkness of 1720, you cannot see the shimmer. You can only sense it. You can smell the faint, sweet, powdery musk of the raw silk emanating directly from the dry earth itself. The walls are silently holding the memory of every single bolt of cloth ever woven within these confines. They are a library of unrecorded labor, a soft, dampening acoustic barrier that absorbs the harsh noises of the outside world and reflects only a profound, velvety silence back into the room. Shift your attention from the walls to the massive horizontal wooden beams that span the ceiling far above your head. These beams, the hari, are the primary muscular structure of the building, cut from the incredibly dense heartwood of ancient pine trees that grew slowly in the freezing harsh winds of the northern mountains. They were shaped not by screaming sawmills, but by the agonizingly slow, rhythmic bite of the hand adze. If you look closely at their blackened surfaces, you can see the distinctive scalloped pattern left by the carpenter's blade, a continuous sequence of shallow, perfectly spaced depressions resembling the gentle, frozen ripples on the surface of a dark lake. These beams are completely black, stained deeply by the continuous daily exposure to the smoke of the Aurori hearth over 100 years. The smoke has acted as a natural preservative, penetrating deep into the cellular structure of the pine, rendering it completely impervious to insects and rot. But more than that, the soot has given the wood a profound visual weight, a heavy, deeply anchoring presence that seems to press down upon the room with a gentle, protective gravity. These massive timbers have witnessed everything. They absorbed the frantic, busy sounds of the daytime labor, and now they absorb the absolute, motionless silence of the night. They are the silent, unyielding guardians of the airspace, holding the heavy clay roof tiles aloft through countless typhoons and deep winter snows, never once complaining, never once faltering in their silent, static duty. To exist within this architecture is to be completely relieved of the modern, crushing burden of absolute individualism. In the waking world you left behind, there is a relentless, exhausting pressure to be unique, to leave a massive, indelible mark upon history, to shout your name into the void so that you will not be forgotten. It is a terrifying, lonely way to live, constantly striving, constantly building your own solitary monument. But here, surrounded by the earthen walls and the soot-blackened beams, that pressure dissolves completely, washing away like dirt in a clear, cold stream. The weavers who built this space and those who worked within it did not carve their names into the looms. They did not sign the magnificent silk tapestries that were sent away to adorn the hidden palaces of the emperor. They lived, they worked with immense dedication, and they quietly faded away into the shadows, leaving behind only the polished wear on a wooden shuttle or a subtle dip in the floorboards. They understood a deeply comforting philosophy. You do not need to be the entire tapestry to have meaning. It is enough, it is more than enough to simply be a single, well-woven thread. As you breathe in the dry, complex scent of the earth, the old wood and the resting silk, you feel the profound comfort of this anonymity. You are just a temporary visitor in this ancient resting space, another invisible thread passing through the long, slow loom of time. You do not need to build a legacy tonight. You do not need to solve the complex, tangled knots of your waking life. You are simply allowed to exist, safely held within the strong, silent embrace of a building constructed by people who understood the supreme value of quiet, dedicated patience. The unseen lineage of artisans surrounds you, offering a heavy, warm, wordless comfort. Their invisible hands seem to gently press down upon your tense shoulders, urging you to finally let go, rest. The walls whisper, "We have held this space for centuries, and we will hold it for you tonight." There is nothing you need to carry. You sink deeper into the smooth wooden floor, your body growing as heavy and still as the massive pine beams above, completely surrendering to the vast, comforting, beautiful architecture of the forgotten past. As you remain perfectly still, anchored by the heavy, invisible history of the workshop, the night outside slowly, imperceptibly transitions into its most profound and mysterious phase. The distant, muted bells of the city's hidden temples have long since ceased their tolling. The scattered, erratic clouds that brought the earlier, gentle autumn rain have finally broken apart, drifting away to reveal a vast, breathtaking expanse of the deep cosmos. You have entered the time the ancients called Ushimitsu Doki, the hour of the ox, the deep, dark trench of time that occurs precisely halfway between the midnight hour and the first, faint stirring of the dawn. It is the absolute nadir of human activity, the precise moment when the turning world breathes out completely, entirely emptying its lungs before slowly beginning the long process of drawing breath for a new day. In this deep hour, the physical environment of the workshop undergoes a subtle, final settling. The ambient temperature, already cool, drops by a final crisp degree, sharpening the edges of the shadows and clarifying the dry, woody scents in the air. The vast wooden structure of the building, which has been microscopically contracting as the air cooled, finally reaches its ultimate state of rest. Single heavy timber deep within the walls issues a soft, resonant clack, a sound not of breaking but of perfect final settling, like a complex wooden puzzle piece finally sliding completely into its designated slot. After that solitary sound, the silence that rushes back into the room is not merely an absence of noise. It is a heavy physical substance. It is a thick, velvety pressure that presses gently against your eardrums, a deep, oceanic quiet that isolates you completely from the rest of the sleeping universe. This specific profound silence invites a deep reflection on the nature of history and the immense hidden value of the unrecorded moment. When you think of the year 1720, the mind naturally gravitates toward the loud, dramatic recorded events of the era. You picture the grand, imposing castles of the shogun in Edo, the sharp, terrifying flash of a samurai's polished steel blade, the complex, treacherous political maneuverings of the lords, or the vibrant, bustling, noisy entertainment districts of the capital. That is the history written in ink on heavy paper scrolls, the history that demands to be remembered, the history of conflict, ego, and relentless forward motion. But as you sit in the total darkness of the weaving room, surrounded by dormant looms and sleeping silk, you realize that the loud history is only a tiny, frantic fraction of the human story. The vast, overwhelming majority of human existence has not been composed of battles and decrees, but of incredibly quiet, unrecorded nights exactly like this one. The true heavy foundation of the world is not built on the sharp peaks of dramatic events, but on the vast, continuous, silent plains of ordinary rest. For every single hour of recorded chaos, there are 1,000,000 hours of this profound, anonymous peace. Consider the finished bolt of magnificent shimmering purple silk resting safely inside the heavy earthen walls of the fireproof kura at the back of the property. When that silk is eventually worn by a high-ranking noble, it will become part of the loud, visible world. It will be seen at grand ceremonies. It will catch the light of 1,000 candles, and it will be recorded in paintings and poems. But the silk itself was not born in the light. It was born here, in the shadows, over the course of hundreds of silent, unrecorded hours. The true essence of the fabric is not the grand event it attends, but the quiet, agonizingly slow rhythm of the weaver's hands that brought it into existence. The beauty of the world is always, inevitably forged in the quiet hours that history entirely forgets. This realization that the most profound, necessary parts of life are those that go completely unnoticed and unrecorded is an incredibly powerful sedative for the anxious modern mind. In your waking life, you are constantly urged to make every single moment count, to be productive, to optimize your time, to ensure that your actions are visible and validated by the world around you. It is a state of constant, exhausting performance under a harsh, glaring spotlight. But the hour of the ox offers a total, unconditional reprieve from that performance. In this deep, dark space, the spotlight is completely shattered. There is absolutely no one here to observe you. There is no audience to impress, no judge to evaluate your worth, no future historian waiting to record your thoughts. You are completely and utterly off the stage. You have stepped into the vast, protective shadow of the unrecorded night. The intense, heavy freedom of this anonymity washes over you like a wave of warm, dark water. You do not need to be intelligent right now. You do not need to be successful or productive or even interesting. You are granted the profound, ultimate permission to simply be a slow-breathing, resting biological organism entirely synchronized with the sleeping earth. Allow your mind to fully embrace the deep, comforting void of this forgotten hour. Visualize the darkness pooling in the corners of the vast weaving chamber, not as an empty absence of light, but as a rich protective liquid. It is a deep, velvety indigo dye, similar to the sleeping vats in the back room, slowly rising from the packed earth floor, filling the spaces beneath the heavy wooden looms, creeping silently up the polished cypress pillars. This darkness does not smother, it insulates. It wraps around your tired mind, dissolving the sharp, jagged edges of your lingering anxieties, bleaching away the harsh colors of your daytime worries until only a soft, monochromatic peace remains. As the hour of the ox stretches out, seemingly infinite in its slow, heavy progression, the boundaries of your own identity begin to beautifully, softly blur. You are no longer defined by your job, your relationships, your past mistakes, or your future obligations. You are simply a center of quiet awareness, floating gently in the absolute stillness of a Kyoto workshop in the year 1720. The history of the loud world continues to march forward outside, completely oblivious to your existence, and you are completely oblivious to it. You have found the secret hidden sanctuary that exists between the seconds, the profoundly peaceful gap in the historical record. The silence is perfect. The shadows are deep and welcoming, and the heavy, irresistible pull of true, dreamless sleep is now drawing you down into the beautiful, unrecorded depths of the night. As you rest in the deep, comforting embrace of the forgotten hour, the very last vestiges of the waking world begin to slowly, gracefully surrender to the absolute night. In the vast shadowed expanse of the main weaving chamber, the solitary andon lamp, the single source of golden illumination that has faithfully held the darkness at bay, is finally reaching the end of its quiet, dedicated vigil. The shallow, unglazed ceramic dish resting within the elegant wooden frame of the lamp has been nearly emptied of its precious fuel. The golden rapeseed oil, which once formed a deep, reflective pool of liquid light, is now reduced to a mere microscopic film, clinging desperately to the porous, burnt edges of the soft pith wick. Focus your heavy, drooping eyes entirely upon this dying flame. It is no longer the steady, vibrant, teardrop-shaped beacon it was hours ago. It has shrunk, withdrawing its luminous reach, pulling its energy back into a tiny, fragile, trembling halo of deep, burnt orange. The light it casts upon the surrounding objects, the edge of the woven tatami mat, the smooth, worn wood of the closest loom is no longer a warm, confident gold, but a bruised, fading copper, the precise, melancholic colour of a deeply aged autumn leaf right before it falls to the dark earth. This fading light changes the entire geography of the room. The shadows which had been held tightly in the corners now begin their slow, silent, creeping advance. You watch, completely mesmerized, as the shadow of a massive wooden pillar stretches and elongates, moving across the packed earth floor with the agonizing slowness of a glacier. It reaches the base of the nearest loom, swallowing the heavy polished treadles in a tide of pure velvety blackness. It creeps upward, consuming the taut horizontal threads of the warp, turning the deep, shimmering purple silk into a solid wall of unfathomable obsidian. The darkness is not threatening, it is a profound relief. It is the visual equivalent of a heavy, silencing blanket being drawn slowly over the complex, exhausting machinery of the daytime world. As each component of the loom disappears into the shadow, you feel a corresponding release within your own tired mind. The intricate mechanisms of your thoughts, the complex weaving of your daily anxieties, are being gently, systematically swallowed by the incredibly soothing, expanding void. Now return your gaze to the dying wick of the lamp. The flame is sputtering, a microscopic, silent struggle against the inevitable. It shrinks down to a mere pinprick of brilliant, intense crimson glowing like a dying star in the vast emptiness of space. The edges of the paper screens surrounding the lamp, once glowing with a soft, honeyed aura, are now completely dark. The crimson point of light holds on for one agonizingly beautiful, stretched-out second. It pulses gently, a tiny, glowing heartbeat, and then, with a soundless, microscopic exhalation, it vanishes. The transition from extreme dimness to absolute pitch-black darkness is a physical sensation. It hits you not as a shock, but as a wave of incredibly dense, warm water washing over your entire body. For a long moment, your eyes search the empty space, trying desperately to cling to familiar shapes, but there is absolutely nothing left to hold on to. The visual world has been completely, mercifully erased. In the absence of light, your other senses are immediately, softly amplified, rushing in to fill the sensory vacuum. The first thing you notice is the change in the scent of the air. With the flame extinguished, a new, incredibly delicate aroma rises from the ceramic dish. It is the smell of the charred pith wick, a microscopic wisp of blue smoke twisting silently into the dark air. It is a dry, sharp, profoundly nostalgic scent, reminiscent of extinguished campfires, resting hearths, and the very end of a long, productive day. It smells of finality, it smells of completion. This faint, smoky ribbon mixes with the deep, permanent odours of the workshop, the ancient, dry cypress wood, the sweet, powdery musk of the raw silk, the damp, earthy tang of the sleeping dye vats, and the sharp, medicinal clarity of the camphor wood bleeding slowly from the sealed storehouse. It is a complex, grounding bouquet that bypasses the analytical brain entirely, speaking directly to the most ancient, primitive centres of your nervous system, signalling that the hunt is over, the fire is out, and it is finally unconditionally safe to rest. As the physical world dissolves completely into the blackness, you become acutely, overwhelmingly aware of your own physical presence within the space. You feel the immense, undeniable gravity pulling you downward. Your body, which has been tense and rigid, fighting against the demands of the day, now entirely gives up the fight. You feel the heavy, solid, unyielding floorboards of the ancient Kyoto townhouse pressing firmly against your back. The wood is cool, yet it seems to possess a deep, internal thermal memory, drawing the last remnants of heat from your tired muscles and replacing it with a solid, grounding chill that slows the blood and deepens the breath. Your limbs feel impossibly heavy, as if they have been cast from the same dark, forged iron as the scissors resting abandoned on the weaver's shelf. Your legs, from the tips of your toes up through the calves and thighs, are sinking, melting down into the very grain of the hinoki cypress. The bones are heavy, the muscles are slack, completely devoid of any potential energy. There is nowhere left to walk. The journey is over. Your arms, resting limply at your sides, are equally weighted. The hands that spent the day grasping, typing, holding and doing are now completely empty, the fingers curled slightly inward in a posture of total surrender. Imagine them as the empty wooden bobbins, having unspooled all their silk, possessing absolutely nothing left to give, nothing left to hold, nothing left to control. They are delightfully, perfectly useless in the dark. Your torso, the heavy centre of your being, sinks deeper still. With every slow, measured exhalation, you feel your chest cavity hollow out, releasing the trapped, stale air of your modern anxieties, pushing it out into the vast, ancient darkness of the room. The rhythm of your breathing has naturally, beautifully synchronized with the deep, unseen rhythms of the sleeping building. You are breathing with the workshop, you are breathing with the slow, microscopic expansion and contraction of the massive pine beams above. You are breathing with the silent, unseen turning of the stars hidden behind the heavy roof tiles. In, slow and deep, drawing the cool, complex, historic air into your lungs. The air is thick, velvety, and deeply nourishing. It travels down your throat, expanding your ribs with a gentle, lethargic stretch. You hold it there for a fraction of a second, suspending time completely. Out slow and long, releasing the breath into the dark. It is a heavy, audible sigh, a physical manifestation of letting go. With the exhalation, the heavy muscles of your shoulders, which have been carrying the invisible weight of the world, finally detach and slide downward, seeking the floor. The tension in your neck dissolves, a tightly wound cord of silk, suddenly snipped by the master's scissors, allowing your head to rest with absolute dead weight against the smooth wood. The darkness is no longer just around you, it is inside you. It has seeped through your skin, filling the hollow spaces of your bones, washing through the chambers of your heart, moving slowly upward to gently flood the busy, frantic corridors of your mind. The thoughts that were screaming for your attention just hours ago are now nothing but distant, muffled echoes, fading rapidly into the profound, heavy silence. The embers of the waking world have been completely, irrevocably extinguished. You are drifting on the edge of the ultimate void, floating untethered in the deep, silent ocean of 1720, heavy, warm, and perfectly, completely prepared for the final descent. You have crossed the final threshold. The transition from the fading world to the absolute void is complete. There is no longer a workshop around you, the walls, the massive looms, the slumbering vats of indigo, and the ancient stone courtyard have all dissolved completely into the infinite, formless blackness. You are suspended in a state of pure, weightless existence, a singular point of quiet consciousness floating effortlessly in the deep, dark ocean of time. The heavy gravity that previously pulled you down into the floorboards has magically softly reversed. You are no longer sinking, you are drifting. You are a single weightless filament of silk, released from the spinning bobbin, floating gently on a slow, unseen, eternal thermal current. In this space of absolute nothingness, there is no past to regret, and there is absolutely no future to fear. The entire concept of tomorrow has been permanently erased from the architecture of your mind. There is only the vast, echoing, eternal present. The silence that surrounds you is not empty. It is profoundly, heavily full. It is the thick, velvet silence of the sealed earthen storehouse, the kura, where the brilliant, finished tapestries sleep undisturbed by the light of the sun or the noise of the world. You are safely locked away inside this impregnable fortress of peace. No demand can reach you here. No alarm can penetrate these impossibly thick, invisible walls. You are completely, utterly, and unconditionally protected. Bring your fading awareness gently, softly to the very top of your head. Feel a warm, heavy sensation like a pool of dark, heated camellia oil beginning to slowly spread across your scalp. It moves with a glacial, soothing slowness, melting away the microscopic, lingering tensions hidden beneath the skin. It glides over your forehead, physically smoothing away the furrows of concentration, erasing the deeply etched lines of worry. Your forehead becomes as smooth, blank, and perfectly flat as the unblemished amber pattern paper resting on the master's desk. The heavy, warm sensation travels down over your closed eyelids. Your eyes are completely at rest, sinking back into the soft, dark comfort of their sockets. They do not need to look. They do not need to process. They are entirely relieved of their duty, staring into the beautiful, healing nothingness. The warmth continues its slow descent, washing over your cheeks, releasing the tight, clenched muscles of your jaw. Your lips part infinitesimally, a silent, microscopic opening that allows the last faint whisper of tension to escape your face. Your entire head is now a heavy, lifeless, perfectly relaxed stone, resting at the bottom of a deep, dark, silent river. The wave of absolute relaxation moves down your neck, a thick, heavy syrup of peace coating your throat and vocal cords. You have no words left to speak. You have no thoughts left to articulate. The internal monologue that constantly chatters, analyzes, and critiques has been permanently, blissfully silenced. Your mind is as quiet and still as the deep, black water resting in the stone basin of the courtyard garden. There are no ripples, there are no disturbances. There is only the perfect, glass-like reflection of the dark void. The heavy, melting warmth cascades over your shoulders, pooling in your chest. Your heart rate, already incredibly slow, drops by another final fraction. It beats with a slow, powerful, muffled resonance, a deeply comforting, rhythmic thud that sounds like the distant, rhythmic beating of a heavy wooden drum in a snow-covered valley. Thump, pause. Thump, pause. The space between the beats stretches out, expanding into vast, quiet eternities. You are existing entirely within those pauses, living in the silent, still gaps between the movements of your own heart. Down through your torso the warmth spreads, a heavy, paralyzing comfort that neutralizes every internal organ, putting the complex machinery of your body into a state of profound, absolute hibernation. Your breathing is so shallow, so incredibly slow that it is almost imperceptible. You are not actively drawing the air in. The air is simply lazily drifting in and out of your lungs on its own accord, a gentle rhythmic tide that requires absolutely zero effort. You are being breathed by the universe. The heavy, dark oil of sleep flows down through your hips, completely relaxing the pelvic floor, releasing the deep, hidden anchors of your physical structure. It travels down the massive muscles of your thighs, turning them to soft, formless water, down through your knees, your calves, your ankles, and finally pooling in the very tips of your toes. Your entire body is completely paralyzed by peace. It is a heavy, warm, incredibly safe paralysis. You could not move a single muscle even if you wanted to, and the profound beauty of this moment is that you possess absolutely no desire to move. You are completely unraveled. The tightly wound spool of your consciousness has been entirely unspooled, the thread laid out straight and flat, perfectly at rest in the darkness, As you drift in this absolute void, you begin to lose the physical boundaries of your own shape. Where does your skin end and the dark air of the room begin? The distinction fades, the lines blur. You are melting into the atmosphere, becoming one with the deep, resting silence of the ancient workshop. You are the invisible dust settling gently on the wooden beams. You are the slow, imperceptible fading of the ink on the paper. You are the deep, slumbering blue resting at the bottom of the indigo vat. There is nothing left to do. There is nowhere left to be. There is only the slow, rhythmic rising and falling of the dark tide. Drift deeper. The water is incredibly warm, incredibly soft. Let go of the last microscopic filament of control. Let it slip through your fingers. Watch it fall silently away into the abyss. You are untethered. You are free. The darkness closes in completely, a thick, heavy velvet curtain drawn across the stage of your mind. The history of the world is forgotten. The story is entirely over. The silent hours have claimed you completely and unconditionally. Surrender to the absolute weight. Surrender to the total silence. Sink down, 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 into the perfect, dreamless, beautiful sleep. Good night. Welcome to Sleepy History with Wesley, your personal sanctuary of ancient tales. Here, we blend authentic historical events with gentle AI technology to recreate immersive, soothing journeys through time. This channel is crafted specifically for relaxation and sleep support. TAND is not a substitute for professional medical advice. For your safety, please do not listen while driving or operating machinery. Now, close your eyes and let history carry you into a peaceful sleep.